6:31, we have a quorum of the select board, so I will call this regular meeting of the Waterbury Select Board to order for Monday, September 15th, 2025. First item of business is to approve the agenda. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
We have a motion by Mike. Is there a second?
I will second.
We had two potential additional items for the agenda. One was the certificate of highway mileage. And one was the veterans. Do you want to add either of those?
I would recommend both those be added. Recommend amendment.
Okay, Mike was here early and the two items we're adding for 8:15 is the annual certificate of highway mileage. And also a discussion about the Veterans Monument in Rusty Parker Park.
Both at 8:15?
Yeah.
I'll second the amended motion.
All right, motion by Mike with those two additions, second by Roger. Is there any further discussion? Right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, we've approved the agenda. That brings us to the consent agenda. We have 4 items. Approval of the minutes of our last select board meeting on September 1st. First, second, and third class restaurant and bar license for Michael's on the Hill. One-time occasion permit for Climbing Resource Access Group on 919 at Forest Fields. And to approve the annual closure of Elm and Randall Streets for Halloween. Is there a motion with regards to the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
There a second? Motion by Kane, second by Mike. Any discussion on any of these? Right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, we've approved the consent agenda. Next up is public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone who would like to speak on something that isn't on the agenda we just approved. We ask that folks keep their comments under 5 minutes. And if needed, we're happy to schedule you for a future meeting agenda. If you're in the room, we ask that you come up and sit at the horseshoe table with us so that folks online on Zoom can see you and introduce yourself. With that, is there anyone online or in person who wants to speak on public comment? Sandy.
Just a quick question. I was wondering if it's possible to put the local options tax policy on the next agenda, so it can start being discussed. And also working on an article for the Housing Trust Fund we put on the, for a town meeting. If you could bring those up maybe the next meeting, that would be great.
Awesome, thanks, Sandy. Anyone else who'd like to speak on public comment? We'll go here. I'm seeing 4 going across, so I'm starting with Carrie, then we'll go to Al, then we'll go to Valerie.
I've been pondering a couple of things that have occurred over the last few meetings. And I'd like to offer a suggestion in the form of like maybe some sort of a policy consideration for your like your meeting procedures. I would like to suggest that meetings that are attended be open to the public, not scheduled for national events. I found scheduling the select board meeting on Labor Day awkward, and as I looked at it, anticipate, I kind of recognize why. The second thing I'd like to suggest is that when individual select board members wish to express their First Amendment rights as an individuals during the public comment portion of the meeting, I'd like to suggest that they should do so from these chairs and not from the select board's table. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Al, I had you next.
Al Lewis, resident of Waterbury. I'm gonna take you back to March 31st, the meeting, select board meeting. And a number of residents had come forward and talked about the intersection of Brush Hill, Stowe Street, and it was well before the actual construction was underway. and brought up some suggestions to bring to the Agency of Transportation's attention that could alleviate some of the safety issues and also the efficiency of moving through that particular intersection. Since then, the meeting was held at the firehouse, and at the firehouse meeting, it was more about what they were planning on doing for the bridge. But I took the opportunity to give the resident engineer and another official who was there at the meeting a copy of what the Selectboard had received first, relative to the same discussion on possibilities for inexpensive ways to go ahead and modify that intersection to make it safer and make it more efficient moving through it. Since then, Bill Woodruff and I have met with the resident engineer of the State Agency of Transportation out on the site. I think, Tom, you might have been on that day too. I gave the resident a copy also of what had been presented to the select board and that had been presented at the firehouse meeting. And he indicated to me he would bring it to the attention of his staff, and they would look at it and consider, whether they were going to do something. To my knowledge, nothing has been done yet. And what I'm here today to do is encourage the select board to authorize our manager, Tom, to contact the state and insist on a meeting to discuss these alternatives or these issues regarding the intersection, now that the bridge is about to finish construction. A couple of items that might be taken care of by the bridge construction project. One is adding a third lane on the Stowe Street, basically approach to Route 100 to allow for a right-hand turn. I'm not sure whether that right-hand turn is also a straight through, which it shouldn't be. And then the middle one should be a left-hand turn or straight. So I'm not sure just exactly how that's setting it up. But also in their plans, we did not have a area set aside in front of Layton Street where the intersection is, where cars should not stop, allowing Lincoln Street cars to move through. And the problem is cars coming in, making a left-hand turn, can't get through. A lot of times people are crowding in hopes to jump the traffic light and get through. The light itself, the timing, is only allows about 4 cars to get through. And that's even exacerbated when you've got cars coming down from North Hill. There's delays there, so you might get 3 cars sometimes, and it could be a dangerous situation. So I passed a summary of this and not take any more of your time, but I would like to include Bill Woodruff. He's familiar with it, he's behind it, but I really think it's a select board decision and authorize Tom to forward that basically request to the state to get them to the table before this project's done. Because now's the time to clear up that whole intersection that can be when this bridge project is wrapped up. And I think it's very shortly because they were out there putting traffic lights on. Today, they were on Route 100. So anyway, I'll leave that with you. That's all I wanted to say, but I'd like to follow up starting today on the March 31st meeting that we had. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Ed. Appreciate it.
And would you get back in touch with?
Yes, and I will say, I'm not gonna try and pretend Robert's rules right now around what motion would or wouldn't be in order, but I will just say our municipal manager is here and present and I think has heard you, and I certainly don't monitor every email he sends, so I would anticipate that that could likely happen sooner. So, thank you. Valerie, you were next.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm gonna probably mimic or copy a little bit of what Harry and Sandy have to say. And it's about respect and disrespect. So I'll start with Labor Day. So Labor Day, it's a legally established state and federal holiday. And yet we had a meeting, and then we called it a special meeting. So I read the agenda, it was a very heavy agenda. I personally didn't see anything emergent or necessary on a holiday, but I was very pleased to see the attendance at the meeting for that because of the agenda was heavy with really important topics. So I think what came out of that for me is that the public, Waterbury voters, when they believe in something and they feel very strongly about something, they're gonna show up at a meeting. Even if it's a holiday. So I thought that was very impressive for my community to do. But that being said, I will say that I found it inappropriate and disrespectful. The next one is agenda items. So the agenda items that you choose, sometimes I see agenda items that are maybe better suited for a roundtable discussion for public that want to attend to understand and hear about different people's ideas and how to do things. Conversations, presentations that are interesting, are surely interesting, but maybe not appropriate for an agenda at a select board meeting. When you have so many important topics in the parking lot. So I know that sidewalks and paving have been in the parking lot since April and May. Somehow sidewalks have fallen off, but I have not seen it on an agenda. Paving's on there, the local option tax is on there since June. The 3-year budget has been in the parking lot since January of 2024. So I would just say that paving and sidewalks is very important. The local option tax, I'm very surprised this has been put on. At the town meeting day in March, there was about an hour's worth of discussion about local option tax and the appropriateness of the select board appropriating funds. Was it right? Was it wrong? There was lots of discussion because we don't have a voting procedure. Who should be making the decision? Is it the select board or is it the select board with the public's input? So I'm happy to hear that Sandy asked for that. I've asked for that twice, actually. So hopefully when Sandy mentions it, it actually gets on the agenda. So I do know that you, as a board, have every right to create your agenda. What I also know is I think from the Vermont Constitution, if you look at Article 6, you are at the end of the day servants of the people. And I think the people, I feel very comfortable saying, I think the people would really like to see those parking lot items of paving, sidewalks, local option tax. I really honestly don't know how I know you're working on the capital budget, how you're working on that successfully without having discussions about those items. I'm not on your board, so I don't understand, but I would think that they would be very, very important to hear the discussions of the public on those. So that's my comments. And maybe when you talk about the agendas around the table, and maybe Harry or Sandy said this, when you're done, maybe offer up to the public if we have ideas for agenda. I mean, randomly, I think you do that, but not consistently. And maybe that's not procedure, but I'm commenting that those items in the parking lot, been there a really long time, and you do tend to put things on there that are just kind of interesting, maybe not so important to your constituents. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room or online who would like to speak on public comment? Chris?
I waited till last. I'll make it quick.
Just got two simple requests, if I could. I'd like somebody to explain to me, because I've asked the question a few times about both items I'm about to talk about. Just a reasonable explanation about, why we can't do something about the overhanging brush on our roads. Outside of the typical reason that the highway department's too busy. I have to continue to travel these roads along with other people who I know who are in the trucking business exclusively. And they complain to me about it, many times. The next request is, and I'm just looking for some reasonable answer, is our bridge decks. Our bridge decks, not only in our town, and I know you don't have any control over the state bridge decks. But we continue for some reason to let our bridge decks, the surface of them just deteriorate when I've even offered to remove at no cost to the town,
a layer or two of asphalt off the bridge decks so that the town could repave that, especially the one by my house, but there's other ones on Loomis Hill, which I did just text Woody about, so I don't want this to fall on him. Earlier this summer, they were supposed to, they did patch the bridge decks by, just you turn off Gupta Road, or onto Gupta Road. That first bridge, they patched those joints, made a hell of a difference. The bridge deck by my house is completely shot, and you can't count all the patches. The bridge deck by the old Heine Myers farm, Woody said that they'd take care of that after Tetro got done. The reason they didn't do it before Tetro did the brook work there is because they were afraid that he was gonna tear it up. But I just sent him a friendly message there. Is there a chance that that can be fixed now? And he said he would mention it to the highway department. But just, some kind of maybe a logical answer as to why those two things keep getting kicked down the road. Because they're both hazards. Yeah, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Any other questions, comments, people who would like to speak on public comment in the room or online? This is your opportunity for anything not already on the agenda. All right, going once, going twice, seeing none, I will move us on to our next item, which is Downtown Vibrancy Fund Letter of Attestation. I believe we have a copy of this to approve, which relates to revitalizing Waterbury, and I don't know who would like to speak to it.
I'll speak to it. Lindsay Sullivan, president of Revitalizing Waterbury. So Revitalizing Waterbury, as a lot of you know, has been around for many, many years. We were founded in 1991 by Kathy Odell Thompson and 16 other members of the community to save and renovate the Stimson Graves block, which now provides senior housing, senior center, and the Axel's Gallery. Since then, we have done many projects around our town, renovating the train station, which we are still the owners of. And the mission of Revitalizing Waterbury is to preserve, promote, and enhance the economic, historic, and social vitality of Waterbury for residents, businesses, and visitors alike. Over the years, RW has taken on the work of the Waterbury Tourism Council and the Economic Development Office for the town of Waterbury. We have organized the Arts Fest since 2001. And recently we organized other events, including our community volunteer fair, the train day, which is going to be an annual event, and events in our newly renovated Jack's Alley. So Revitalizing Waterbury is one of the original members of the Vermont Downtown Program since the early 2000s. And actually, starting tomorrow, we will be hosting all 24 downtown organization members during the annual program retreat in our town this week. In 2023, the Vermont legislature approved the Downtown Vibrancy Grant Program, which provides a $25,000 grant annually to each member organization to leverage further support from host municipalities, supporters, and businesses. These grants are designed to support the 4 pillars of Main Street America, which is our national organization supporting downtown revitalization. RW has been an accredited member of Main Street America since 2023. And I have a brief overview of some of the things that we have been proposing to do with the $25,000 this year. Economic vitality to support and sustain business development in our downtown core of the community. RW is supporting the expansion of the downtown core to include the Bidwell Lane and Foundry Street area, as well as incorporating Waterbury Center and gateway businesses in economic development planning in partnership with Planning Commission and other community organizations. We will also again be convening our community volunteer fair with the nonprofit community in our town. We have also been working with the Vermont Department of Tourism and Marketing to promote Waterbury as a regional and national destination, and partnering with neighboring communities to build connections, expand the community calendar, and continue to build on the energy that animates this community that we all love. Our design committee works with volunteers from Ben & Jerry's and Darn Tough, as well as the town and community volunteers to put up our hanging flower baskets, our banners and flower beds along the roadways and the roundabout. And we've been expanding our lighted garlands during the winter season to give us a cohesive and very impressive look of unity, beauty, and community caring. We're also developing a new strategic plan, and we will be reaching out into the community to better serve town residents and businesses and visitors. We're adding a new gala benefit event in addition to our volunteer recognition events. And one outcome of this may be a new name for our organization in the following years. We will be coming back to the select board in October or November with budgets and plans for 2026. But what we are asking for today is for support from the select board to further go after our vibrancy fund. We need support from our select board in order to try and have access to these funds and try and get this grant year after year. So we're asking for signatures from you and support to continue to put $25,000 from this vibrancy grant program into our town going forward next year.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. Does anyone on the select board have questions about this? Tom, do you have any comments on this as staff?
I do not, aside from this has been approved in a number of years.
We have 2 minutes. Does anyone on the public have any questions? Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay. So sorry, right over.
I was just gonna say, I'm gonna recuse myself from any debate or vote on this due to the conflict of interest.
All right, so we have a downtown vibrancy fund letter of attestation, which is just acknowledging that needs select board sign up so they can apply. Oh, thanks. Hi, Amy.
Hi, I just had a quick question. Is there a place to look and see where these funds would be allocated or the decision-making processes associated with the funds and how they're dispersed? I heard of some generalized economic development efforts, but I'm not clear on how the funds would be used specifically.
I mean, we have used it towards many different things, but for example, let's see, the Bidwell Lane and Foundry Street, a lot of the signage for that, a lot of the things that you see downtown have actually been, have happened because of our efforts to maintain our eligibility for the vibrancy grant. It really is like a quite an extensive list. We actually are just working on a 72-hour itinerary that will be partnered with Vermont Tourism, that our marketing committee has been working on, which is would be hosted by the Vermont Department of Tourism, and it's a big marketing campaign for many businesses in town, trying to encourage people to just come here and spend time in the whole town. I mean, yeah, it's a lot of the economic vitality that you see. The support that we have in our town has been due to this vibrancy grant, which we did receive again this year. I don't have a list right in front of me of exactly how it has been budgeted in the past, but it has done signage. It has done some of the art that you see, some of the public art that you see in town is other things that we had to do for previous years for vitality and economic growth. And like I said, a lot of marketing things, and we're partnering with Vermont Tourism and hoping for a new event calendar that would give a much more centralized place for all of the 24 towns to have events and increase tourism nationally and regionally.
Okay, thanks for explaining. Yeah, in the past, and yes, some of that stuff I've seen, is quite colorful and vibrant and helpful.
Yeah.
I ask, and I was thinking more of a forward-looking plan. And I ask because while tourism has its many, many benefits, there's also, I think there's some direct correlation to, infrastructure and impacts. And I know you mentioned the Planning Commission, but I'm not clear on those other organizations that are involved in that. And I think specifically about when I sit here and listen to select board conversations where they're making decisions. I think we just heard something about sidewalks or things of that nature. Adding more people to the area creates impact in some ways. So I'm just trying to reconcile how are those conversations interplaying with municipal bodies outside of the revitalizing Waterbury conversations. So I was looking for more of a, here's what we're planning to do with the funds if we receive them. And then that might help other areas or departments or functions or commissions kind of assess implications, good, bad, or indifferent.
Sure. I mean, so we have different
Lynn,
things that, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, not picking me up. I just want to say I'm really appreciating this conversation, and I want to just bring us back to our ask tonight on this agenda. So appreciate your question, Amy. This $25,000 of funding is not Town of Waterbury municipal funding.
Right.
It's funding from the state of Vermont. What the select board is being asked to sign is to acknowledge that this funding will supplement and not supplant any funding traditionally provided by the town. So to be clear with everyone, the Town of Waterbury does provide funding to revitalizing Waterbury. It is in the town budget in multiple places that is voted on at town meeting. We get an annual report and there's an MOU specifically for economic development services. So I think, Amy, you're raising great questions. I want to say the scope of today is a letter of attestation saying we're supporting revitalizing Waterbury in applying to the state for 25,000 additional dollars, but that would be beyond what the town supplies. We wouldn't just automatically cut their budget.
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you for clarifying the budget plans.
Does anyone on the select board have questions? Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve the Downtown Vibrancy Fund letter of attestation on behalf of the Waterbury Select Board.
Second.
We have a motion by Mike and a second by Kane. Is there any further discussion? Right? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed and any abstaining? Roger's abstaining, but Kane, Mike, and I can sign the letter of attestation as a majority of the board. All right. Thank you all for this. Any other questions, comments? All right. I will move us on to our next item, which is event permit requests. We have two tonight. First up, we have Scott and Donna Culver, who I know have prepared materials. Please come on up. Thank you.
We also have Steve here, Municipal Transport, and Jess, who have another portion of that section that they want to,
Do they want to come up and enjoy the horseshoe? You're welcome. I mean, you came all the way to the meeting.
Thanks, Mike.
Glad you're part of the select board. Oh, yeah. If you're on.
Glad to have you there.
Like I said, this is a two-part section.
Yeah.
The first part was, an October 18th event for a craft fair, or craft show at the Rusty Parkway Park, which has already been, I said we'll say approved because there was no reason for a permit for what we were gonna do. The site has been, sealed down, paid for, so that part is gonna happen. So what I did was I sent you guys a detailed list like I typically do every time, including when we do the Lily Parade in regards to, what we'd like to do there. That's gonna require the approval of the permit, which is the entertainment one that we're seeking. So basically, pretty much the day we're gonna take events, it's gonna be all seasonal, it's gonna be, Halloween themed. It's gonna have, Steve and Jess and their crew from E&S Transport would like to do their trunk or treat event there on the Rusty Parker, Park area, opposed to the Filbert Park area, where they'll get better exposure from Main Street. As well as, my wife Donna and I would like to, host the craft show, which we have already been approved to do so. We're talking 20 to 25 vendors, as well as Black Cat Coffee, which Steve and Jess will discuss if there's questions regarding, as well as Park Row Cafe will all be part of that. And as the Little League president for Clyde Little League, I'm going to try to put together
jack-o'-lantern contest for the community children here to, basically carve out pumpkin jack-o'-lanterns, have them, displayed out there for voting and prizes to be had at the end. So just a great big community event for the day. All that Steve and Jess.
Yeah, this will be our 6th year of doing this trunk or treat. And it's done very well. So hopefully this year joining forces with them and having it out front will gain a lot more. I don't know how many people.
I think the one thing that we are asking for the review of permit is that normally we do our event on private property. But like we'd like to join with these guys this year, and as Scott said, have a little more exposure to the roads, so that more of the community can come and be involved. But we would like to, I should say, have our bouncy house for the kids to play on. And that is what we're asking of you guys today.
And by the diagram that I sent you guys, we designated the corner where the pavilion area is. And I spoke with Gary Dillon informally in regards to the safety portion of it. It sounds like, what's the name of the company putting up the Real Bounce?
Yeah, Real Bounce.
Real Bounce will be the
Thank you.
ones who will set that up. That's a certified company, so it's not gonna be us ragtag guys rolling them out and blowing them up. So it'll be set up by them, taken down by them, owned by them. It will run on a generator, which will be in a safe place, cordoned off for the fire extinguisher, like we did our craft show down here for our food vendors. There won't be any food vendors on this one in particular.
Johnny and, Brittany they're gonna open their doors for us, they're gonna decorate, everything, how vendors are gonna go to them, and no food on property.
So Black Cat, coffee and Park Roll will be.
And Black Cat is just setting up.
Yeah, Black Cat, they are usually part of our event where they decorate a trunk per se, and they go all out and do potions and stuff.
I think there's like 9 businesses that are part of our event that always join, from the bank. Yeah, everywhere.
So
it's big community thing, right?
so I guess what we're saying is we're trying to do a seasonal event. We're trying to join forces with the ENS group. Put one item out there that will be supervised from when it goes up until it comes down. It'll be put up by a professional company who does this every day, been doing it for years.
And I will provide the insurance.
Yeah, insurance will be provided for everything here involved, and it will be handed off to the town prior to our event. And as far as traffic control is in place, there should be none, because Steve and Jess are gonna secure the back parking lot at Pilgrim Park, which is a private parking area for not only our vendors to offload, set up. They're gonna park back there, which means everything, that entire loop from Park Row around will be accessible like they did every single day. And this will be a lighted event. It won't be after dark, so we won't have to worry about, kids in costumes and that type of stuff at the same time. So I think it's
It
gonna
should be closed down by 4.
Thank you very much. So to clarify, you're not asking for any road closures.
nothing.
Nope.
Not even a traffic on this side.
Great. I will note, I spoke to our recreation director today, who was aware of this, already has approved the use of Rusty Parker Park for the craft fair, but recognizing that this was going beyond just one item. It's before us today. Do any select board members have questions? We'll go Mike, then Kane.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I know you said you're gonna have things like a Pilgrim Park and then things at Rusty Parker, so there's not gonna
Just
be
parking over it.
just parking
Just
at
parking.
those, not like on there.
Yeah, overflow parking or for the vendors to park.
Okay.
Yep.
I thought there was gonna be more
Nope,
stuff.
nope.
So we're estimated 20 to 25 craft vendors, so that's 20 to 25
And
cars.
then, yeah,
We
Okay.
park them away. That means people that can come in now.
More parking.
yeah,
They're not gonna hinder the businesses that are there beside TD Bank and all that, so it just works out nice.
My questions now.
Kane was next.
Yeah, I'm just gonna ask a couple boilerplate questions. How many people do you think you'll expect to show?
traffic.
Yeah, just
Foot
foot traffic, yeah.
Foot traffic,
Yeah.
well, we had between 200 and 300 kids last year for our event.
But we have some volunteers coming to do that,
Oh.
so.
Yeah, we'll have this set up and tear
You
down
guys have
crew, that type of
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, we're all.
We're all,
The majority of our
So I guess
staff
the
is
follow-up
there.
question would just be, will your volunteers be identifiable from folks that the rest of the folks
Yes.
on the?
Yes.
yes.
I mean, I'll recognize you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's on the event staffing like we have in the past. It's, and if there's any questions, or you're gonna escort them to one area or let them know where to be. You know, I mean, the park's not big, but it's big enough to where,
Right.
you know, those types of concerns we've already actually discussed, which is good.
Okay.
Roger?
Do you, if, in case, it happens during that day, which of course it won't. But if it happens to, do you have a rain day?
We do not, we do rain or shine, and it says it on my flyer, as we do too, we're rain or shine. Yeah, all of my vendors know it's rain or shine.
Fortunately, it'll be, you know, 40+ pop-up canopies, so hopefully no one's wearing too much,
I've
Halloween makeup.
done
to
many
get washed
crafts.
away.
It'll
And
be fun.
as for the pumpkin competition, it won't be lit, there's no candles, there's no anything combustible, it's gonna take, it's gonna be a daylight event, they're gonna put them on tables, they're gonna remove them at the end. Our crew's gonna take care of the trash and do the pickup afterwards, and we're gonna make sure that we leave the park as good, if not better than when we, accepted it that morning.
Awesome, thanks. Tom, do you have any input, as town staff or concerns? Any other select board questions? Right, I guess we'd be looking for a motion to approve the event as outlined in the permit. Roger?
I move to approve this event, as outlined.
Second.
Any further discussion? Any questions?
I have one more thing we didn't
Yes.
discuss. So according to Katerina, the public restrooms are actually closed. So I've actually reached out to Bill Woodruff already, and we're gonna see if the town will supply us 2 portlets, and then our event will pay your individual people that bring them through to have them in. I don't know how that works, if we have to, you know, do our own, I know that's all part of the discussion, but I figured you already have a waste company here. If they could drop a couple of off, we're gonna approve the fee for the, you know, for the portlets.
The town has, an agreement with the photo companies that work on. Yeah, we use them all the time. Yeah.
So like I said, I know Bill Woodruff was checking to see if they were in fact gonna be closed, and it sounds like they are. And we're willing to approve that fee, those portlets for that event.
Sounds good.
Great.
Okay.
Mike?
I have a question, Al, could probably be, will the restrooms in the pump house be closed by then?
What's the date?
18.
October 18th.
Yes, they will be.
Okay, that was, I was gonna try to save some money.
All right, we had a motion by Kane. Did I have a second?
Motion.
Sorry, motion by Roger. Is there a second?
There was, that was me.
He was the guy.
Oh. I jumped ahead of my notes. Roger then Kane, motion and second. Any further discussion or questions on this? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Tori will abstain because she was not present for the discussion. Thanks, folks. Thanks so much for doing this for the community.
Good luck. Thank you, guys.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Next up in events, we have Tom Bryant, who I believe is here. We have, part of an entertainment permit and then supplemental material, that you prepared that you wanted to come talk through. And this empty chair is like Tony's shoes on the other side of me. Come on up. Thank you. Thank you.
Do I sit right here?
Yeah, you're welcome,
Would you
please.
have an extra copy, cause I.
Yeah,
I
take
actually
this.
don't. Of the.
It's everything, yeah.
Okay, great. Robert. Ready, Brad?
Right. So we hear your restaurant is having a birthday. We need a date and a description of what you're doing so we can approve it, kind of like we just went through with
Okay.
the last group.
So, it's actually November that we officially have been in business at Maxie's for 20 years now. And, it's kind of hit me as just being a kind of a big number and thinking back of all the history of what it's taken to get here. And we've never really celebrated any sort of anniversary. So I have decided to not only celebrate it, but try to celebrate it in a pretty big way, in a way. I mean, not too big to make everything larger, but, so October 10th, which is a Friday, I am hoping that the board will be able to work with me to come up with a plan that appeases all your concerns, and willing to take any suggestions you might have as well. So our plan is, as you see, there's a picture of our parking lot and it has a little drawing showing where we're planning on having this. And the party I'm trying to put together would have at least one band that would play for 3 hours. That would be a stage that's set up in the far left of our actual front parking lot. Those parking spaces wouldn't be used for parking. And it's a sort of similar to during COVID when we were limited to just outdoor seating and we set up a patio out there that worked really well, actually. So that would be the plan, to have a stage at the very far upper left. And then, to be honest, right now, I am trying to get a tent, a big tent, but it's a very busy time of year. It's a lot of weddings going on and they're trying to work with me on that as well. And I should mention, they even discussed if we delayed it another week, but really to come up with the date I came up with was availability with the band that's playing, because they're very busy with weddings and things themselves. And that was the first and best date that they could come up with. The band is actually the Grift, which is very popular within our area. They actually have 3 bands, the 2 main people, Peter and Clint. And they actually played at my wedding, and they've actually played a few small shows at our house in Morton. So it's a group that I really like, and it's easy to work with them because we're friends. So it's that part of it's all been going pretty well. So my proposal is to have music, and the music would end at 9 o'clock, which I think is kind of the standard that's tried to put out here in Waterbury, from what I understand, that music, events don't happen past 9. So the latest any music would be played is until 9 o'clock. I'm not sure of the start time yet, but it would probably be 6 o'clock, because that would be 3 hours. But I also have another friend in another band who would also like to perform, and I might propose that they play an hour before the second band, which would put us to a time of maybe like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock as actual start time for music. One of my reasons for that is because I feel like there's probably people that might want to come out and just, attend, come for a little bit, that are more get done work and do that, as opposed to people who want to wait till later and spend, an evening, so that we can, try to make this fun for all people that are on different time schedules and stuff. We would be serving beer outside, and the inside would still be open, and we have a full bar, which we're licensed for. I've been in touch with the Department of Liquor Control, and they've shown me, basically, I just fill out a form, and everything that I've presented to them will pass without any sort of objection. And I've been in business for 20 years with a liquor license, and we have never once had any sort of citation or issue with the liquor control. So I already know those kind of things are not going to come up. So I haven't actually filed it yet, because I'm waiting to make sure that it's worth the $25 to file it and put it all together. So the one thing that their concern is that we distinguish exactly where the boundaries are for where alcohol can be consumed. And also prevent, just, how these things work, where you will have a fence around me, and it gets to be a temporary fence, and I actually have some nice picket fence left over from the 3-foot picket fence that I've left over from COVID, which I can use for part of the more public, the visible places instead of some sort of temporary red fencing, snow fencing, or whatever it is. But in any case, as you see the lines that I have there, within these boundaries, I can fit a 40 by 60 tent, which would definitely accommodate. I think it would accommodate 300 to 400 people if that's what it ended up being. I have no idea. The grip usually has a pretty good draw. And we're gonna be offering some free food, so, between free music and free food, I think, there's a good chance that we'll get people to show up. So I know parking and,
Can I pause you for a
Yeah.
moment, Tom? I don't mean to interrupt you. So my job as select board chair is I have to figure out how to get this board and everyone in this room through our agenda. And
Okay,
admittedly, when I made this agenda, we had, a whopping 10 minutes for both event requests, and the first one that was in here took most of it. So you were here tonight, you
Okay.
came in before this meeting, and I want to be respectful of you wanting to have this event and figure out how we can get you the assurance you need, while I also know that we had a lot of people who came out for later agenda items and we get to them in time.
okay,
So here's a proposal.
Great.
I want to give 3 more minutes and see if the boards can ask some questions while you're here. We have a special meeting on the 22nd,
okay,
and I would propose that we could give you a final approval at that meeting
okay.
based on that. Does
Okay.
this seem workable for the board? I'm facilitating on the fly, but feeling like we're going a little long and just
Oh,
want to be respectful of
Great,
everyone's
I'm
time.
all for just get through this. Get
Great.
through
Do board members have areas of, and if we're feel ready for a decision tonight, I'm just doing the thing where I'm watching the clock. So go ahead, Kate.
I guess everything to me seems pretty boilerplate until you said 300 to 400 people in your parking lot. I eat at your establishment quite frequently. I would be concerned about packing 300 to 400 people into the parking lot.
Right, and I was just getting to that part of it. So, one of the things I would like to ask the town, I did meet with the zoning board, Matt, I forget his name, but the guy who runs the zoning board about if we're disrupted, if we're within zone. And the one thing he brought up is that parking is gonna be an issue. The post office will be open until 5 and we need to respect their parking. Some people may not know this, but that parking lot is actually designated for Maxis and United States Postal Service customers. Because it's often used as a parking ride and it's often used. When we have the parade or we used to at 11 o'clock, my entire parking lot would get full and I was pretty much out of business for 3 or 4 hours every Saturday before the 4th. So I've dealt with, I know what it's like to be intruded upon. And that would be between me and the post office, and I'll make sure that their parking is available. But one of the things I wanted to bring up and see if this is an option or a possibility to alleviate that issue is if I could possibly have access to either Dak Row or the rec area as a place to park, depending on what's going on there, because I would advertise and even have people out front saying that's where you need to park, and sorry, you gotta walk a little ways, but I don't want to start having cars all over town. The stove, whatever, the thing we do on the village that we've done sometimes when we've had bands for the art fest, I think. Also has a huge draw, probably as much as 300 or 400 people, I think. And the town has always been able to accommodate that. And there's things that happen down at, like even Rusty Park on Thursday, there's no some big huge, well, there is parking all around, but you know, for the 20 years I've lived in the village, I've had their music playing on Thursday nights and I can hear it clearly at my house, but it's just the bass. So I know that music does cause, things, and that's why I'd like to see if that's an option. Because that's a big issue.
Roger across from me has a question, and then Tori. Go ahead, Roger.
I support this event. Maxim's been providing great service to this community for 20 years. I think they deserve a celebration. I suggest that we reach out to the rec department to see if we can alleviate this parking issue. I also have some concerns about the tent, but in conversation with the tent company, that might be able to be worked out. I know that Vitalizing Waterbury could no longer hold the Waterbury Arts Fest on Stowe Street because the tent company couldn't secure the tent on asphalt. And so that may be an issue, just bringing it up. But I think we can try to work out these issues on the intervening week and then come back to this on the second.
Great. Tori? Yep.
Handled it, yeah.
All right. Does that seem workable, Tom? We'll follow up and
Sure.
figure out how to make this
There's
happen.
no other things that I should be, that are concerns that I should be doing homework on and trying to.
I think we'll need more confirmation in general coming in with the plan of this is where the parking will be and we've talked to the people
Right.
and it's okay.
Yeah,
I can tell you're already thinking about all of these things and we
Right.
just want to make sure all the ducks
Right.
are in a row before we say,
Right.
yes, for sure.
yeah. Well, great. I'm glad. We appreciate you guys listening.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, probably parking was my concern, but also you should probably be as soon as possible with Vermont Liquor Control getting your permit in line.
Okay. I actually,
That's sometimes a little bit, I know from doing that for Rotary, for NQID, it's not the quickest.
okay. I have contacted them and I spoke at length about this, so I will, like I said, I don't want to go get a permit for something I'm not allowed to have, so. This was the turn, hopefully. I can go get it, but. They probably want to see something on the permit that I'm even permitted for, it's probably one of the.
Because it has to go through, they'll send it to the town clerk for approval.
Okay, I will do.
Right. Any other questions? So it sounds like. Well, I'll let you know, other concerns and then
Yeah.
plan to review this on the
Right, the
22nd.
only thing I have, when is the next meeting?
It's a special meeting midday, next Monday at noon.
Okay, because. What day is that, the 22nd?
Yes.
Okay. It's just. It wouldn't. That's great, but I, with the bands and everything else, the tent company and stuff, I need to start, I've already made. A commitment to have the band, and I'm about to make a commitment with the tent. And, for me, I just hope that this. I don't know, that's great that you wanna wait till then, but, it doesn't give me much, it's less time to advertise, it gets us down to like 2 weeks. And pretty much that's where I've gotta put everything on hold until I hear from them, and I'm sorry that. I didn't bring this up a month ago because this really came upon. Like I said, our actual birthday's in November and we were gonna try to do something then, but I wanna take advantage of the little bit of possibly fair weather to do this.
So go ahead, Roger.
I'll move to approve this application pending the resolution of the parking issue.
Okay, motion by Rogers, there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Roger, second by Kane to approve this pending resolution of the parking issue. Is there any other questions or comments from the board?
I'd like to add an amendment,
Go ahead.
pending approval of the outside consumption permit.
Okay, well, that's gonna have to be in place too, because that's kind of, help us offset some of the cost stuff.
I
Also-
would just like to, have you come back in on the 22nd, just to report back to us on the resolution of these matters.
Okay, and then in the meantime, is the director of the rec department, the person would try to get a hold of, and that would be a person to cover both, the rec center as well as that row, right?
She helps with fields and reservations of facilities, yes. Her
Okay,
name is
great.
Katarina, and this is all on the town website.
Right.
And happy to connect with you to help
Okay.
navigate you
And
to
I
the
don't
right
want paying a
person.
rent for some sort of thing to offset any costs or things that it might, any costs that might incur for them along the way. So,
So what I heard was a motion saying that we want to approve this, but we're gonna need the parking to be resolved, an outdoor consumption permit, and to have you come back and let us know all of that for sure on the 22nd.
Okay.
Questions or comments from board? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we'll look forward to hearing from you on the
Okay.
22nd.
thanks for your time.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to doing this, so.
Thanks, Tom.
Happy birthday.
Years. I can't either. It's like,
It doesn't seem that long.
I know, that's. But my employees that were like 19 and 20 or 40 years old, it's like. It's a lot. There's been a great long roller coaster of stuff, getting through COVID and other things. There's a challenge, so.
Great.
Glad we made it this far. I'm glad.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for your time.
Yep,
Yeah.
all right. For all those keeping track at home, this brings us to the 7:05 agenda item. I'm gonna name that I fully intend to give the amount of time this agenda item was scheduled for, which was 20 minutes, which was done on purpose. And I appreciate everyone and their patience for being here and trying to support our community members. This agenda item is because we had a very enthusiastic community member named Evan Hoffman who said, by the way, I've done some research on years and years of town meeting data, and would you like to hear about it? And we as a board said yes. Does any other select board member have things they want to share before we invite Evan up?
I'm just excited.
I'm very excited for the presentation.
All right, Evan, the floor is yours, and I do have your materials. I just need to make sure Tom can allow me to screen share.
Maybe temper your excitement a little bit because it's gonna get a lot of numbers, so. Got copies of my slides here, as well as copies of hard data. I have extra copies if anybody in the audience wants to take a look at that and follow along.
We're about to get it on the screen.
There, okay, no, it'll be in the screen, it's okay. Oh, right.
And just say, Evan, we can also put this on the town website. I didn't get it till before the meeting. And
Yeah,
just
the-
immediately said.
The Google
Do you have any
Sheet is-
bigger notes?
anybody with a link can view it all.
You want the sheet to start
Yeah,
for the presentation? Yes?
yeah, the presentation.
Oh, presentation, sorry. Dun, dun, dun. I think it's in the was that one? I'm sorry, it's not full presentation though, but it was the best we're gonna do right now.
So I looked at 65 years of data from the town reports. Before we get into the numbers, I should talk about like where these numbers came from and how they should be interpreted and what sort of the limitations are of what I was able to do. I went through the minutes of town meetings, looking for votes that were taken by hand count or paper ballot. Because that has the total of those votes recorded, and that gives us a snapshot of how many people were in attendance at that particular moment. On the next slide there. Example of the sort of thing I was looking for. This is from the 2025 minutes. There was 143 people at the meeting at that particular time. Obviously, those votes don't happen every year. So there's a lot of years you'll see on the spreadsheet, there's a lot of NA where we just don't have any data for how many people were there in that year. I did consider ways that maybe those gaps could be filled in by looking at like news articles or photographs, but I did not get into any of that. And those would come with their own set of problems anyway. But the main thing to remember here is that these numbers are always going to be underestimates of how many people participated in the meeting. Because people will come and go before and after, maybe not everybody raises their hand on either side of the vote. But I think they're decent enough estimates. This year, I would say that there was about 200 to 250 people at the town meeting. And the highest number recorded was 208. So it's certainly in the ballpark. I think you could probably add as much as like 25% to any given year's numbers, but I don't think that changes the trends and conclusions that I drew from it. The next slide, please.
Tom, can you just close the participants and make it bigger? Sorry. Can you just close the participants? It'll make it a little bigger. Thanks.
So this graph is the key takeaway. These are the absolute numbers of how many people showed up each year. The blue line is the Australian ballot. The red line is the in-person attendance. These are not adjusted for population or the size of the checklist. These are just the absolute numbers of how many people were there. The Australian ballot was adopted for town officers in 1972. At least most of them. The town clerk was a few years later. Prior to that, the only balloted question each year was whether to allow alcohol sales in the town. And that ballot box was only open until 3 p.m. and only available in person, as far as I know, but it didn't have absentee or mail-in voting or any of the other advantages that longer polling hours would give you. So the before 1972 is a bit apples to oranges. You can't compare them directly, but as a result, those numbers you can see on the left-hand side track pretty closely with the in-person figures. After the Australian ballot was adopted again in 1972, you can see it had about 35 years of continuous upward growth until it peaked in 2008 and has held pretty much steady since then on a sort of 4-year average basis. The in-person attendance, on the other hand, saw an immediate drop off after 1972 and has been steadily declining ever since then, apart from occasional spikes for controversial issues. There have only been 2 times when in-person attendance was over 500 people. Australian ballot has rarely been less than that. Next slide, please. This is zooming in on the years right before and after the Australian ballot was introduced to get a better sense of its effects. 2025 has had about 200 participants, which would be the sort of low end of this chart. So people have said that there was good turnout this year, and while that is true relative to recent years, in the 1960s, it would have been very low, or at least fairly low attendance. 1972 itself had very high participation. That was the year that not only we switched to Australian ballot for electing all of you, but also the select board was expanded from 3 members to 5 members. And a lot of people turned out to vote on that particular issue. That is the 3rd highest turnout on record. What's that year? The decade before that had an average of about 275 attendees each year. The decade after had an average of 225. So there was an immediate drop of about 50 people per year. And that average is brought up by a few outliers. Most of those years have less than 200 people. It also includes the first years for which there were no data, no votes recorded in minutes, which I believe is itself a sign of decreasing engagement, that we'll discuss later. But the key takeaway there is that immediately after the Australian ballot was adopted, a lot of people stopped showing up to the in-person meeting. Next slide, please. This is the same data, but weighted per capita, the best I could do. The exact checklist size wasn't recorded before 1990 and wasn't consistently recorded until 2010. So the years before that, I used an exponential growth to try to extrapolate. It is still only an estimate, but I think it's a decent one. And what we can see here is that while the attendance has gone down in absolute numbers, the population has gone up. So on a per capita basis, it has fallen off even more sharply. Before the select board moved to Australian ballot, there was an average of about 300 people attending town meeting, but I estimate about 1,800 to 2,000 registered voters. So their turnout was regularly between 15 and 20% in those years. And again, this past year, a good turnout of 200 people was less than 5% of the town. And in fact, turnout has only broken the 5% mark twice in my lifetime. 6.8% in 1997 and 14.3% in 2012. The 2012 vote was a hugely controversial one. That is the highest turnout on record with 511 people. That was about whether to establish a townwide police force. But even though it was the highest turnout on record, population growth means it was still shy of 15%, which would make it only a mid-range result from the 1960s. And in this graph, we can also see that the Australian ballot, despite staying about steady in absolute terms since 2010-ish, again, population growth has meant that that has started to go on a downward trend as well. Next slide, please. This is the number of years where the turnout falls within a certain range. For example, that first bar there means that there was 14 years when the in-person attendance was in between 0% and 5%. And then the next column is between 5% and 10%. You can see that the Australian ballot has a very nice bell curve, typically between 15 and 30%, but with outliers in either direction. The in-person attendance, on the other hand, is mostly between 0 and 10%. And has only been over 20% twice. Yeah, again, in 65 years of data. Next slide, please. This is the same data, but the in-person numbers are split up between pre-1990 in yellow and since 1990 in red. Before 1990, it has a similar bell curve, but although shifted a little lower to the Australian ballot, typically between 5 and 15%. After 1990, it has gone down dramatically. There's no bell curve visible at all. And over half of the year since that point, about less than a 5% turnout. I do want to note that that era suffers the most from the lack of data, but I think the trend is still clear. Next slide, please. In addition to tracking attendance, I also track certain figures that I think can act as a proxy for engagement and attention being paid to town issues. This chart is the number of amendments that are offered from the floor each year and how many of them were ultimately adopted and passed. I think this is a way to measure whether people have strong, well-developed opinions about town issues, as well as how comfortable they are with using the rules of order to advance their opinions. If people are more opinionated and more engaged, they're going to be amending from the floor more often. I think, anyway. And you can see that there is an era between about 1970 and 2000 when this form of engagement was particularly high. In the 1970s in particular, people were often citing concerns about inflation and the energy crisis and the impact that would have on the town budget. Trying to keep that down in response to national political and economic issues. Many of the amendments in this era were driven by particular individuals who are very highly engaged and show up in the minutes year after year, making amendments and motions. And those numbers have naturally dropped off as those people have passed away. In particular, Hope David was a regular fixture at the meetings. Which I'm sure the folks older than me know perfectly. Since 2000, though, this metric of engagement has fallen off pretty significantly, and there are a lot of years where no amendments were offered or adopted at all. Everything was moved and exactly as written. I think it is interesting that in the 1960s, despite the high turnout numbers, the engagement here seems fairly low. I don't know if that trend would continue if I looked at another decade, or if that was just a quirk of the 1960s. But I believe that people were driven to turn out mainly to elect the town officers, and once that moved to Australian ballot, people didn't feel the need to show up to do the rest of the town business. Next slide, please. The next statistic I looked at to try to proxy for engagement is the length of the meeting. I included the breaks since they weren't always recorded exactly what time they took breaks. But this should give us an idea of how much debate and discussion was happening at any given meeting.
Can I interrupt you and ask, is that along the side, is that measured in hours?
Yes. Yes, there was a over 12-hour meeting in 1972.
But wouldn't that be affected because it used to be our town meeting was both the town business as well as the
And
school
school
business?
business, yes.
So
Yeah.
those, you could see why those would be a lot higher and
Well, that
it's
was
got shorter ever since the school.
that was separated in 1992, and you can see in 1992 that there is a bit of a downward shelf there. But the school district meeting generally didn't run more than like half an hour and 45 minutes. When that was happening alongside the town meeting. It wouldn't change the general downward trend line that you can fairly see. The 1972 meeting was the outlier at over 12 hours. That was because they were voting officers from the floor using paper ballots each time, and often several rounds of voting for each office. And that year they were electing the extra 2 new members of the select board. Before that, the time of adjournment wasn't included in the minutes at all. So we don't have any data on the left-hand side of that graph, but they assume they were also very long. But since we don't elect from the floor anymore, that's not really a fair comparison to make. Yeah, meetings were typically 6 hours or longer up until about 1990, and generally 4 hours or less since then. This indicates to me much less debate and discussion, fewer attendees, and less well-informed and strongly held opinions about town business that would make people talk for hours longer. It's not to say that we wanted long town meeting just for the sake of it, but if people are having vibrant, healthy discussions, that's inherently going to take time. And this data indicates that that is happening less and less. Next slide, please.
And I'll note you're at 2 minutes and then we're hitting 20 minutes, which you thought you wouldn't.
The last thing I tracked was the number of votes or recorded vote totals that were taken each year. I only reported the highest one in the previous graphs to give us the sort of maximum turnout in any given year, but some years have more than one vote that were taken that way. And This, I believe, is a way to measure controversy and engagement. Again, if people are paying attention and have strong issues or strong opinions about issues, their votes are more likely to be split and have to be counted. Pre-1972, most of these recorded votes were for the elections of officers. And since then, we do see a mild downward trend in the sort of number of controversial articles. And especially since 2000, there's a lot of years where no votes were counted at all. That's the reason for the spotty attendance data. And it also is itself data that indicates declining engagement. Last slide, please. Basically, my conclusion is that you can split the history of our town meeting into about 3 different eras. Pre-1972 was the era of floor votes, high attendance, but apparently relatively low engagement. I believe that turning out to elect officers may have been the main driving force behind attendance in that period. The 1970s and early 80s were a high point of engagement, even as attendance started to fall off. This seems to be driven at least partly by national economic and political concerns and how they impact the town. That was mentioned in both the minutes of the meetings as well as like the select board and town manager reports in those years. But sometime in the mid to late 80s, attendance and engagement have started to drop off enough for it to become an issue. That's when we start seeing complaints about attendance and potential fixes starting to be discussed. I mentioned 1992 was when the town school district meeting was split off. That was done so that it would have a set distinct time that people knew about, that they could show up and discuss the school issues rather than having to sit through the entire town meeting. And that was designed to try to promote attendance and engagement with the school district. In 2001, the meeting start time was moved from 10 o'clock to 9 o'clock. That was also explicitly done to try to boost attendance. And there were some various other things that were discussed in the years following that, including an evening meeting, moving to a weekend, none of which were adopted. This is basically the point when town meeting starts to take on its recognizable form in terms of attendance and also like the way the articles were structured, stuff like that. So
Great.
and it is my conclusions.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Evan. I will just name, this is a huge amount of information, of mathematical and conclusions, and just thank you. It's clear you've done a ton of research. I have to look at some of the graphs and what they're even showing. And I'll just name, I bet people have a lot of reactions and questions. And once again, my job is to figure out our best path forward in terms of timing. I'll name, you have this slideshow presentation. You also had a spreadsheet that I think informed
Yeah, that's
some of
the
you.
raw numbers for the attendance and the percentages per capita turnout.
So assuming we can get PDFs, this is stuff we could post so that other folks could dig into the numbers, or select board members. Again, I'll say for me, it's a lot of numbers coming all at once.
Yes.
Does anyone have specific questions for Evan? I will name, our next agenda item is also related, so I think there will be time for digestion and reflection altogether, but felt like this was a good ground setting. Okay.
I have one. Did you read all of the minutes from every town meeting from 1960 to this year?
Pretty much, yeah. There was some skimming. I may have missed an amendment here or there, but
Well, you certainly have my admiration.
Anne online, I see you have a question. Go ahead. And then Amy.
Okay, my question is, where you're counting the Australian ballots, the people who are in person are also casting those ballots. So I don't think those graphs are fair because there are people who do not come to town meeting in person and only vote through the electronic balloting. But that your blue line included people from the red line, and I think that should be separated out. Or did you already separate that out?
That is both absentee and mail-in ballots and ballots cast in person. Yes, it is the total of all Australian ballots, no matter how they were cast. The number of absentee and mail-in ones is in the record for some years. It's not that consistent until recently. I don't see the need to split those out personally. I think that all of the Australian ballots should be counted the same way, regardless of how they were cast.
Is this a follow-up, Tori?
I would say that maybe you had 250 people there and you had 2,000 ballots. You should subtract the 250 people from the 2,000 to be more fair in comparing the two. Of course, I'm a strong advocate to keep in-person meetings, but thank you. It's a lot of work and you're to be admired for sticking to it. Thank you, Evan.
Thanks, Anne. Amy, you were next, and then Tori.
Yeah, I did want to say, echo what Ann just said. This is a remarkable amount of data mining and presentation. In your presentation, do you have assumptions noted with each data set as well?
Like what?
So for example, as you're talking about population, that doesn't really speak to demographics. So I've heard some of the commentary was that you're surmising is around engagement, but engagement may not have anything to do with comfort level with speaking, perhaps as much as they may not be informed. And vice versa. And there's also correlations I've found that town meeting is one day that has built from many select board meetings. That's one example. Another example is, as I'm hearing folks talk about in-person versus Australian ballot and that debate, I see demographically population size doesn't clearly articulate this busy environment where you may have a family of 5, 3 children, 2 adults, and then you're running into constraints of time availability versus comparing that to a retiree, for example, who may not have all those life demands. So I'm just curious if those are some, just a couple examples of assumptions that may help articulate the data a little more in terms of events. Another, I think there was a comment you had made around the 60s into the early 70s. And you are using words like strong opinions and things of that nature, which may very well have been true. I know many people of my elder generation definitely had them. But there was also the effects of the Vietnam War, for example, and so availability to participate or the implications of families that were strained because of that demand. So I'm just curious about things like world events and more local events, such as like the school board changes as well.
Yeah, there's a lot that the data doesn't capture. I was trying to stick to the objective numbers as much as I possibly could. The stuff about strong opinions and like the reasons people are or aren't voting is my interpretation and conclusions that I think that I personally drew from this data. I'm not going to claim that that is the objective reason that everybody is voting the way that they are. And as for the demographic stuff, I just don't have that data.
Okay, thank you. And again, kudos to the data poll. That's a lot of work to go through all that stuff.
Tori was next, and then Chris.
So Evan, I apologize, because I think I missed it in your presentation. How did you count the in-person turnout?
Oh, that was the methodology. I looked at the minutes and like on the, for example, here on the first slide. A hand count was conducted and yielded a result of yada, yada, yada in favor for a total of 143 votes to spend to do whatever. That's what I was looking for. I was looking for that total of a vote that was taken and counted and recorded.
Okay, and you just went like with the highest number? of
Yeah,
the-
yeah, you did.
Okay, no, that's perfect, thank you.
Chris and then Beth.
Nice work, Ed. One question is there a driving point here, or is this just general information for the select board and the attendees to absorb? For me, it's not apples and oranges, it's apples and potatoes. Because in every case that you cited, the unchanging factor in town meeting is the budget discussion. Australian ballot took away the school budget costs and discussion about the school system, and also took away the elected officials portion of being town meeting. So we've got apples and potatoes. And as far as I'm concerned, if you look at the town of Waterbury's financial position, I think past boards, current boards have done a great job. We're in good financial standings, but if you look at our school systems and our school budgeting processes, it's chaos times 10. And what I fear is that if we switch, I've said it before, if we switch this all to an Australian ballot, we're gonna end up exactly like the school systems broke and unable to fix ourselves. So appreciate your efforts. It's great fun.
Yeah. I will say that my goal with this was to give everybody a solid factual foundation to build off of. I think a lot of people have a lot of ideas about what the issue is with town meeting, or whether there is an issue. And I want to sort of put some numbers and some hard data on that. I will say the conclusion I drew from this is that the problem was bigger than I thought it was initially. Looking at the turnout numbers from the 1960s and how they compared to today was pretty alarming. So that is certainly going to be informing my opinions going forward. But the reason I wanted to bring this to the board and the public was so that everybody would have the same foundation that they're working off of.
Thank you. Thank you for your work. And I think that what you showed us put hard numbers behind trends that we know about, that we see. We understand there's only a couple of hundred people that come to town meetings. The last point that you just made, saying that when you look at the 1960s to now, you're more alarmed. Well, maybe we should go back to electing the officers from the floor, because we instituted Australian ballot and participation went down. And I think Chris, I share Chris's concerns. A couple of things about the information that you showed when you talked about the length of town meeting, and clearly, I don't think anybody wants a 12-hour town meeting. I'm not sure anybody wants a 6-hour town meeting. 4 hours is a lot. When the meetings started at 10, your length of meeting included breaks, it said. When the town meeting started at 10 and we had school meetings, the practice was to adjourn the town meeting at whenever it finished, and we all went to lunch, and everybody ate lunch for an hour or so, and then we came back and then did the school meeting, and then we got to the point where the school was concerned, people are leaving after lunch, they're not here, so we started to alternate years. So when we would have school meeting at 10, and then, the town meeting after lunch. So I think you've got to take into consideration that a little bit. I think my biggest, comment is that I think it's pretty good that we get 200 to 250 people to sit and talk about town business for 3 or 4 hours on a Tuesday in March. And I think that there are some reasons why the amendments are getting lower than it used to be. I think maybe I'm part of the reason for that, part of the problem. For example, when we first adopted the capital improvement plan, the select board told the voters, well, we want this capital improvement plan so we can start saving money. But if we're going to buy a grader or a dump truck, we're going to have an article on the warning for that specific issue. And we would talk about it. Over time, we just present a capital budget and say, we want to spend $880,000 to do this paving, this truck, these sidewalks, and it gets approved. People ask questions about it. And just because somebody doesn't make an amendment doesn't mean there's not engagement. There's a lot of times that people ask questions. And I think I was always geared up to try to give good answers to any question that was asked. I think Tom does the same thing. And I think the board tries to do the same thing. So just because there's not an amendment doesn't mean there's not engagement in the process. The final thing I'll say is that you said 1992 was when we stopped having school district meetings that were part of town meeting. I think we continued to have open town meetings for our Waterbury school until we formed U45. And that was 1995, I think, and then 1996 or 97. But, when the schools, both, when Harwood went away from, when Harwood was created, and they had an open town meeting for a long time until, I came here in 1988, and there was still an open Harwood town meeting that people went to, and they voted for the budget from the floor. And the Waterbury School District had an open town meeting well into the 1990s. And yeah, there were a couple hundred people that went to those meetings, and they asked questions, and they got answers, and they made amendments, and ultimately budgets were passed. I can't tell you the number of meetings that I have been to, the information meetings for the school district, where we're talking about $25–30 million budget or whatever it was, and I don't even know what it is now. Lori might be able to tell me, she was on the board not too long ago. But I would go to the Prospect School the night before town meeting to hear the presentation about the school budget, and I was the only person in the room besides the school directors and the superintendent and the principal. And that's where I think we will lose engagement, is once you move to Australian ballot, then people just say, there's a few of us that come to the select board meetings all through the budget process. There were a few of us, a decent number of people, but in the 10s or 20s that went to the Have Your Say Day. There will be people that come out. There may be some people that go to the information meeting the day before town meeting to hear about the Australian ballot. But I guarantee it won't be 250. It might be 50 if you're lucky. So that's what I'm leaving with. And I think that the system that we have works well. We brought it to the public this last town meeting, and the people that were there said, we want to keep it the same. And I think having 250 people who are engaged in hearing about your budget and hearing about the issues that affect the town and voting on them, I think you get a much more informed vote than you would by just counting whatever, 1,500 ballots. So I hope we stick with town meeting, but I know it's an ever evolving process. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. And I see your hands up. I'm gonna have you wait. I'm gonna say, Evan, thank you so much, and invite up our next speaker again related, so there'll be more time. Any board members have last questions for Evan before he heads to a seat?
I just had one quick.
Yeah.
Because our prints are in black and white here.
Yeah.
The year 2020. I don't see any, I don't see any, COVID. Yeah, it's COVID, right?
That was 2021 and 22,
Okay, so that peak, the over 2,000 ballots cast.
presidential primary.
Got it.
And you can, that's why I did a 4-year moving average, and you can see spikes every 4
Right.
years.
Yeah.
If you look very closely down near the x-axis, you can see that there is actually zeros for 21 and 22. I gotta include that.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm gonna have you wait for a minute. Al, is this for Evan?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think I'm in favor of town meetings to start, but I think the information that this gentleman has provided should be a good foundation for the select board to ask its general public questions. For example, I'm 50 years, 50 some odd years, I've been a resident of Waterbury. But in the first 5 years, I was trying to get established, and I don't remember going to a town meeting, to be honest with you. But once I found out what's going on in the town, I got more and more involved. And I think it would be interesting, to find out, since our population is growing, we've got more and more people moving into the town from other towns. Are they moving from towns that didn't have a town meeting or went by Australian ballot only? What's their background? Because if they came from towns, and a lot of them are probably coming from towns that didn't have a town meeting, it would be interesting to see how many get engaged. Let's say, asking the people who attend the meetings, have you been a resident for 5 years or 8 years or whatever, you would consider, to get an idea of what the trend would be and start building that kind of information off of the data that you're providing. Because I think these variables, some of them have been discussed, are important to add in before making a decision on which way to go. And I see the impact of a lot of people in the last 5 years moving into the town of Waterbury, and I don't see them getting involved in things that are in the town. And yet, in the next 5 years, they may get very much involved. So it takes time for people coming from the outside to go ahead and get used to what's going on and get an interest. And just sitting here at the select board table, it's going to be the individuals who aren't residents of Waterbury, they own their life necessarily, and yet they're getting involved. It took them some time to find out and open up and take the time. And I think the idea that people who are working say, well, I can't take the time, and when you'll always find the time to do something that you want to do. And I've seen many of my co-hosts that worked in the state of Vermont find the time to go to the town meetings because they felt it was important. And that's all I want to say. But I think the data you're providing should be a foundation for the next phase, and that is to get some specifics. The data is good.
All right, with that, I'm officially calling it. Thank you, Evan, for all the work and the planning. Susan, thank you for coming and attending this Waterbury Select Board meeting, which I'm sure has been highly informative. Do you want to introduce Susan? Do you want me to do
it? Well, Susan can introduce herself. But I did speak with her a few weeks ago, and she graciously agreed to come to a meeting and share some of her expertise.
Yes. And I'm happy to have you go after Susan. I gave everyone one turn before, so I'm happy to have you provide a comment after Susan's presentation.
Okay, great. And thanks everybody for being here. Oh my gosh, I love this conversation. This has just been totally fascinating to me. And amazing research. That's just wonderful stuff. Really great data. So I'm Susan Clark. I live in Middlesex, and I'm a big fan of Waterbury, right? I'm always looking next door for all the inspiring things that you do in your community. Do you have my PowerPoint? Yep. Yeah, maybe I have some,
I don't know.
just a
if it's
few
gonna
slides.
We're gonna try it. Let's see.
There you go. Yeah, so I'm here to just talk about a few strategies. I'm a facilitator, I'm a trainer. I work with towns across New England to help them strengthen local democracy. And show the next slide. I research and write about local democracy a lot. I co-authored a book about Vermont town meetings, all those in favor. And that was co-authored with Frank Bryan and, yes. And Evan, if you haven't read Real Democracy, you definitely should. That is Frank Bryan's 30-year, regression analyses, attending town meetings across Vermont, sending students out literally to thousands of town meetings. All kinds of great findings from that's kind of surprised the political science world. And I'd be happy to talk about those sometime, but that's not why I'm here. But all this in favor is a sort of Reader's Digest version of some of those findings. So I followed your debate last year with a lot of interest, being right next door. I know you were debating about town meeting on my ballot, and lots of Vermont towns are grappling with these kinds of questions right now. So I really empathize with the moment that you're in. And I actually have been doing a lot of workshops on these kinds of topics lately. And I'm going to tell you, they take about an hour and a half. So I am not going to do that to you at all. But I did just bring a couple of slides that I thought might help clarify where we are in this moment in March. So maybe the next slide. As we talk about some of the tensions around the town meeting, but really also carrying through to democracy in general, democracy throughout the year, there are basically two good things that are in tension here. And I'm just gonna ask that we think about them as democratic quantity or breadth of participation, and democratic quality or depth of participation. So we value quantity a lot. I don't think there's anybody here who doesn't want broad participation in our democracy. It's fundamental, right, to democracy, that everybody is welcome and nobody's excluded. We also, I just heard some passionate descriptions of why we want high quality democracy. We want the process that we are including people in, right, to be worth it. We want deep, informed, empowered participation, meaningful engagement. We know that strengthens our community. So the question is, how do we navigate between these two good things? And Waterbury just had a really powerful deliberation on this, so you know this as well as I do. And I think next slide. The truth is that there is not one right answer that's going to work for every community, because this kind of tension, the two good things that are in tension with each other, involves competing identities, competing underlying values that are in tension. And I gotta tell you, the human brain, all of our brains, really prefer a simple good versus evil narrative. We really prefer that. We would like that. It's always tempting to pick a side, but it's crucial to remember that this isn't the good guys versus the bad guys. It's the good guys versus the good guys. Next slide. This is, social psychologists call this a polarity. It means when there are two good things that are in tension with each other, or even contradict each other. We need them both. We try to pull one way and we just get more stuck. And the way, when you're in this kind of polarity, two good things that are in tension, we have to relax and accept them both in order to get out of the trap and come forward together. So some examples in our daily life are things like parenting. We have to be both firm and flexible as parents. And we know what happens if we lean too much on one or the other. A good business has to be grounded, but it also has to be visionary. Those are two good things that are intentional. Our home state of Vermont, right, since 1788. Anybody remember our state motto? Dreaming. Okay, yeah, you can throw the next slide. The ultimate motto of paradox, right? If each of us was totally free, we could never be entirely unified. And if we had to be in total unity, we could never be free. At least I'm sure they know where they stand, right? That's, you know. So, the thing about polarities is, on the next slide, you can see there's a lot of value in fleshing these out together, democratic quality, democratic, sort of spending some time together to explore these tensions, some of which you have already done. The next slide, the way it works, if you do one of these exercises, is you talk about the benefits of one, but you also talk about the overuses. Because there can be over reliance, there can be too much of a good thing. And so when we do these kind of exercises, we name what's great about each side, but also what happens if we over rely on them. And the next slide shows that we do not need to read these, you know these already, but a typical argument, an endless death spiral, is when I really feel strongly about say I'm a quality person, democratic quality person. I'm gonna talk about all the benefits of mine, and I'm gonna talk about the overuses of yours. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be like yellow, 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 yellow. And you who really like that really focus on the quantity, you're gonna say all the good things about yours and all the bad things about mine. Green, 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 green. And it's like one of these conversations, like with your you know, the uncle that you don't really like at Thanksgiving, you know, where you're like having this endless death spiral of like talking past each other, evoking the worst of each other. I've seen it again and again in the communities. It breaks my heart because they are both good. These are both good. We just don't want to over rely on them. So maybe the next slide takes the same facts, but agree, if we can agree that we actually don't want the overuses and we actually do want the benefits of both. If we can explore this topic that way, it can actually wind up with more creative solutions. Once we can agree that what we want is the benefits of both, it allows the shoulders to lift and it's like, all right, now let's get to work. The trick is rather than thinking about solving this problem, you know, it's not an either or. We need to think about managing them. How do we get a both in? And you know, Waterbury has explored this in depth, and you've discovered there's not an either or. Polarities are never solved; they can only be managed. So that means taking the time to understand the values and exploring the trade-offs, and doing the hard work of finding the best both and solution that's right for your town, and it might be different for a different town. So next slide is basically I would argue that this might be a good time for so sort of a committee, you know, a democracy matters committee, a diverse citizen committee that could, you know, maybe be filled with folks with a variety of viewpoints, but who are committed to the both and, committed to strengthening local democracy, both quantity and quality. I think I have another slide. Yeah, democracy matters. You know, there are a bunch of towns, a growing number in Vermont that have democracy matters committees. Middlesex has what we call the solutions committee. The town of Bethel has one. Craftsbury has one called Freedom and Unity. There are a number of them. They report regularly to the select board and the town staff. You know, your town manager, they would absolutely work hand in hand with your town clerk, obviously, your election official, your elections folks like your board of civil authority. That you might, you know, probably actually a good idea to have representatives from those on that committee. So that's an idea for moving forward at this juncture. You would need to think hard about what your charge would be to the group, and it seems to me that you could go in one of two ways. It could be a study group. It could be a study group to explore, you know, ideas and make recommendations. So the idea here is not to like farm out the debate, you know, and have these folks duke it out on your community's behalf. The idea is that this would be like a group. This is a collaboration among neighbors and your town to really look at what's possible. We might want to invent something new for Waterbury. Things that Waterbury could consider are representative town meeting. That's the model we use in Brattleboro. It's really common throughout New England, by the way. There's dozens of them in Massachusetts, across New England. And it's, an option, you can just vote at, from the floor to switch to representative town meeting if you have a population of over 5,000. So, and we're in a representative town meeting, you elect, like, you name the number, but, you know, maybe 150 people to attend town meeting, and so that helps allay the fears that there are certain sectors that are overrepresented. This is, it's also, this is really common in Switzerland. Switzerland, all of the towns there, are run by town meeting. All of the communities there are run by town meeting, and the small ones use a floor meeting, and the big ones, like Zurich, 350,000 people use a representative town meeting. So, they keep that deliberation alive. There's some other models. There's a New Hampshire model, where they have a floor meeting, and you can amend at the floor meeting, and then what comes out of that floor meeting, it goes to a ballot. So it's a combination, it's a hybrid. And Jericho tried to take this on. They are just starting to do this. They have a fall meeting where they explore what could be discussed, then they have a January floor meeting with amendment, and then a March ballot vote. The trick is that it's technically not in Vermont statute. So they kind of seated the pants it in Jericho. And I think so it's a pinky promise between the select board. Their town meeting is not technically a town meeting. It is a select board meeting where all the town people come and have the vote, and the select board has a pinky promise. That's whatever whatever happens at that meeting. So I don't actually recommend this model, but I do recommend that a town could take that model and put it into the town charter. And then, boom, it's codified. You would not have the problem that Jericho has.
Wouldn't that have to be approved by the legislature?
Yeah. But you know, it is the New Hampshire model. It is the only, but they don't even have us doing that in New Hampshire. They have either town meetings or this model, which is kind of good too. So I think Waterbury leads the way, right? I mean, you guys could do some really cool stuff. And there's other things that you could do. This group could look at, like, improvements to your current meeting, like using clickers to vote, which is something we use a lot in Massachusetts. It's a radio system, so it's not computerized. It's closed circuit, but it allows private voting within the vote. We can't do it off. Can't do it. And I think the town of Lincoln is thinking of top things. So Vermont, because they're just looking at this. Okay, and I think last slide is another option. So a committee could look at different innovative ways for Waterbury to have a different kind of town meeting, or that same committee could, or maybe in addition could, look, kind of zoom out and just say, hey, let's keep the way we are, but let's make it just so much better. Improve democracy throughout the year. Again, this group could be reporting regularly to your select board, your manager, working hand in hand with your town clerk and your elections folks. And if you went in that direction, I have been collecting it, just a really inspired list of projects that towns have been taking on. Several of them have created operators manuals, like a town operators manual. I think I brought a copy. Which is like, hey, your car comes with one, your blender comes with one way. And it's to really welcome people into, what does the select board do? What's the planning commission? How do the roads work? What is trust? What is a trust for your road? When can I meet with people? That a citizen-based guide to being in this place. There are lots of towns that have created youth involvement in town meeting. Like in Woodbury, they actually have a youth town meeting where they give them $500 and have the kids actually duke it out. It's pretty funny. You could be training small group facilitators. Lots of ideas that a group like this could bring forward, could actually do. Like, it would be a working committee as opposed to a committee that just comes back to the select board and says, here, do this, or here, town clerk, do this. It instead would be, we'll do it. We will get together in the evening and address all letters, a welcome new voter letter to everybody who's been added to the checklist since the last year. So lots of ideas for that group of better. So that's my short little take on Waterbury. I just think this is really, I know it's tiring, it's a really cool moment. For them. A lot of potential to do great things at this junction.
Thanks, Susan. Stop the share for a minute. Select board members, questions, sorry?
For that representative model that you talked about, where like different, neighborhoods send a representative, how does that representative get elected?
So, generally, I mean, it depends on the size of the town and whatever they're, like on the smaller side for this model, but absolutely within the realm. You would probably divide up into the town into neighborhoods, maybe 3 neighborhoods or something like that, or you could call them wards, but whatever. So that if I lived on this street, I would have, rather than voting for 150 people, I'd be voting for 50. Whatever number it is. So I'd be more likely to know those people. And it would be running for office, a person, you would be writing how it would happen, but generally speaking, it would be, you'd be running for town meeting. So you have a go and get your petition and have people, go door to door, In general, the experience, I think, is that it's not hard to get elected to be a town meeting representative. Basically, if you love town meeting, you're probably gonna be one. But it does allow for for a person to say, well, I will vote for you if you can think about, the people who, whatever my interest area is, so you can have meetings and talk with the representatives and sort of, again, raise that concern that, certain, people are being representatives. A town can also offer, stipends, for participation in a representative. But, if there are concerns of that.
Thanks. Other sector questions?
Yeah, I would really like to see one vote.
Sure, this is, this is an old one from Middlesex, and it was printed back when, it's the insurance company on the top of the globe. Yes, National Light used to give away free printing, and so that's why this looks so nice. It was like this fancy glossy thing, but this is from 2008, so it more likely is that it would be online. That if you Google Bethel Operator's Manual, they have about 45 to 20 students. It's new and it's online. That's great. Yeah, it's a really great community project. So, have people come together and that we can get 3 photos from the wonderful photographers in town and artists. This is a quilt to me by somebody on those sense. So that's the
Things, Roger?
Yeah, I'll just remember that Liz Schlegel asked me at town meeting this past year whether we had considered the Brattleboro model, and my answer was no, which we hadn't, because we basically just took a look at the model across the street here in Duxbury, and the town meeting didn't really give us much flexibility to consider lots of different models. We sort of picked one and asked people to consider that, which they did, and I think we got some good debate out of it. So today we have Susan here to present us with some different options, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come. Also just mention that one of my colleagues in the Montpelier downtown organization, Montpelier Live, is staging a new residents meeting or get together at Camp Mead in Middlesex on Sunday the 21st, and Waterbury is invited so that we could do something to try to stimulate more involvement with our new residents.
So like new Vermonters, new resident,
Yeah, I don't know that much about it, to be honest. I just saw it and then I called up Katie, Trouts over in Montpelier and she said, oh yeah, Waterbury is most welcome and anybody else, it's a camp meet between 3 and 5, on a week of Sunday. So there you go.
Roger, are they talking about like new residents as time-wise versus, like new Americans, immigrants and stuff like that? Just curious. What the
Yeah.
focus is.
My impression is it's like people who have recently moved to the community, yeah, regardless of where they have come from.
Since you're a resident of Middlesex, does this operator's manual or like citizen's guide to my community, do you think this has a really positive impact on newcomers to your community? Because I do get a lot of questions, like when I say I'm on the select board and somebody goes, what is the select board? And it explains it all right here, which is, it'd be great to just pull out of my pocket.
There you go.
The town clerk's office, when we put it together, I have to say, it was a different town clerk then, a little skeptical. They were like, everybody knows this stuff, what do we need this for? And I was like, well, it's free. Pretty quickly heard a lot of positive feedback. I mean, we made sure everybody in town got one, but we also had to stack them at town hall. So that, but nowadays, it would of course also be on the website. But I think new residents felt really welcomed by it. In fact, Thetford created one and they called it a welcome. But we thought that it was more important. It's not, I mean, yes, obviously you want to welcome people, but it's not really for new residents. It's for anybody who, starts to feel like, I don't actually only want my private self. I want my public self, I want to be part of this community and I want to understand it better. So sometimes it has to do with how old you are, or, whether you bought a house and then you want to start thinking about yourself as a citizen in a more population. This is something I love doing and Waterbury is close by, so I just, I'm happy if you decide to do something like Community Committee, I'm happy to, be useful, at their first meeting or, whatever. I think that's of interest. We can do a little bit more in depth.
Thanks, Susan. And I had you wait, go ahead. Thanks for being patient.
Going back to Evans, and Bill and Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we changed town meeting time from 10 to 9 in the morning was when Keith Wallace stepped down as moderator and Jeff Kilgore took over. And I can't remember the exact reasoning, but it was at 10 o'clock because Keith had to milk his cows and couldn't get to town meeting before 10. So that was the reason we went to 9 o'clock instead of staying at 10. That's all.
I think it was at 10 historically because there was a lot more plowing
More
back in the day. And Evan was right. I mean, yes, he stepped down, but it was also, people said, maybe if we start an hour earlier, it will allow more people to come. So it's a combination of both. But I think it was historically across the state, 10 o'clock was a very common starting time for town meetings when Vermont had a lot more farmers than it does now.
If anyone didn't hear online, Bill Shepelek from the audience is noting that 10 a.m. was normally when town meeting was historically, it sounds like, before this change. Thank you. Right, any questions from anyone in the public for Susan? I've got Liz in the back and then Matt.
I'll come forward so people can hear me. Liz Schlegel, Chair of the Board of Civil Authority, which oversees elections, so obviously very invested in the topic. Well, thank you, Evan and Susan, for being here, and Susan for letting me know about this meeting, because it's so exciting to find out about stuff like this. And it is definitely something that, as a big promoter of democracy and engagement, I am interested in. I think a committee would be a great idea. Karen and I have worked for years to get more folks out, to make town meeting more welcoming and inclusive. And as I did with Carla before that, and we would really love to have more folks involved in figuring out what can make things more welcoming, right? And to have quantity and quality for all kinds of public meetings. So thank you both for all your work.
Thanks, Liz. Now what's next?
Mount Fullerton resident. Thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate your framing of this as two good things. I'm somebody who is not from Vermont, moved to Vermont, or moved to Waterbury like 6 years ago. And did not really, I've never experienced anything like town meeting day before, but very much a fan. But I am also somebody who advocated for expanding voting access via Australian ballot and spoke at town meeting day. And I just want to like think back to Evan's data and thank you, Evan, for doing that. I think there is something that this really reveals to me, which is that there's this big gap of people who clearly care enough to go and cast a ballot, but for whatever reason aren't able to make it on town meeting day. And I don't think that means that they aren't, you know, they don't care enough to find the time or make the time for it. I think there's a lot of barriers being able to show up for 3, 4, 12 hours and be able to participate at that same level, even if you really want to be there, even if it's really important to you. And so I think finding ways to get the most that we can out of both of these good things is really important to cultivating that kind of like strong democracy, especially in younger people. I think there's less and less, you know, attention paid to local politics, and we all know how important that is. That's why we're all here. And so I really encourage the board to spend some time thinking about like, why does this gap exist so much? And what are some of the systemic barriers that prevent people from being able to participate? In addition to changing like the structure of town meeting potentially, what are the things that we can do around town meeting to enable more people to be able to show up when they want to? And I know there's things around like businesses giving days off work or like closing for certain hours, but not everyone can afford to miss 4 hours of work or a full day of work. And so what can we do around like incentivizing paid time off or offering childcare? I know that was like something that people were working on last year or this year. So I just wanted to encourage that. Like, I think the committee is a great idea. And I think that was my big takeaway from Evan's data was like, there are reasons why this gap is so big because there's people who clearly care and 2,000 people who care enough to give their input, but they aren't able to be there in person. But that shouldn't discount their right to have a voice in their town and the budget. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Archie.
Susan, one of the, what could appear to be an easy fix, might be to change, town meeting to, a weekend day or, an evening where more people may be, available to participate. In your research, has that made any discernible difference?
Great question. And as I mentioned, Frank Bryan's data is just, it's decades of political science. And that was one of the questions that he asked. And basically, sometimes changing the date or time, and we can have a town meeting on, the first Tuesday in March or any of the 3 days previous, changing the date or changing the time sometimes helps, sometimes doesn't. And on average, didn't make any difference. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try it, because you might be one of the ones where it helps. On average, I mean, as a political scientist, what he said was, this isn't the thing necessarily that's gonna move the needle. What's gonna move the needle? And what he found was there are 3 things that move the needle. Number 1, town size, and Waterbury's getting bigger. And basically the smaller the town, the smaller the greater the per capita attendance. So you've already got a strength. Waterbury is a biggish town. And tiny towns get better per capita attendance. Number 2, Australian ballot. The more ballot is used, I mean, sometimes think that might be a way to balance the quality, but in fact, it pretty much it's very likely to weaken the meeting, and the data is very clear on that. And number three, power, do stuff. Are we doing stuff at town meeting? And some of this has to do with this, with the state, you know, is the state allowing us to do things at town meeting? You know, and so being very clear about the exciting things that are on the warning, being very transparent about the budget, and it's like, oh, you know, road salt is up and speeding, traffic control is down, and communicating that kind of stuff can actually raise awareness. But, nationally, when we ask Americans to vote on local issues, even if we give them a ballot, even if they don't have to sit through a 4-hour and 8 hour time, nationally, local participation is around between 15 and 20, maybe sometimes as high as 20%. Basically, most of us in our democracy, we trust federal government least, we trust state government a little bit more, we trust local government most, and we participate least in local government. Maybe because we trust you, or not sure exactly why they aren't exactly sure, partly maybe because our elections for national are all happen at once in November, and local elections usually happen this spring, so that can be part of it. But in terms of moving the needle, I think a big one is having awareness about what's happening, having that power, having good communication about what's happening. And also, just really your agenda, this is something I think we could do. Think about democracy as town meeting day and 364 other days. Because there's so much that people, that all of us can do during the year. And it might be that young people actually don't want to come and sit and talk about gravel for 4 hours. Like,
It's good stuff.
Sorry, but a lot of town government is a little boring. But we do some cool stuff. And maybe that's where we want to frame the around. It's like, hey, we actually could use some youth involvement in this recreation issue, or in this, you know, so maybe inviting people into the thing that is most interesting to their thing, rather than trying to get them really interested in a town project. That's pretty good. Might be a funny question.
I'll make no comments about speaking to the room of budget enthusiasts, Mike, and then I might need to move us on just for time.
Be real quick. There is, I think, in our community, a real push-pull on this quantity versus quality issue.
Yeah.
And I know people fall on different sides of the equation. But one thing that I thought that Evan's numbers gave to me, which I thought would be important, maybe instead of, I don't think we should be relying upon numbers of votes and stuff like that. Maybe we should have someone at the door with a clicker that says how many people, because I know you see people come in, go out, and it does vary. And I think, you know, that's why I'm surprised at some of the numbers, you know, that I see. You know, I sometimes think, as I think Evan did present that there is a percent that's probably higher if you do have that. But I think we need to capture that, you know, how many people are actually attending the meetings versus just, you know, you can't just go based upon votes that were taken, because some people were there, some people, once a vote happens, they go. So you need to know who was there for any length of time at the meeting.
That's definitely true in the town meeting data. Frank Bryan took a head count 4 times during the meeting.
That's probably a good one.
Awesome. Thank you again, Susan, for coming in and sitting through discourse before, after, and during your comment. Bill, you had your hand up. Do you want one more thing?
Yeah, very quickly, thank you, Sue, for all that. And, you know, Frank Ryan, I took some classes with him, and it was always fascinating to hear. I think, Susan mentioned, you know, maybe approach this through the town's charter. The town does have a charter now, and it's a very narrow charter that we have that is really put in place for the local option tax. But there's certain things that we can do at open town meetings, even though maybe some people would question it. But as I said before, we used to make sure we had an article anytime we were going to buy a piece of equipment. we used to have a budget and we talked about the general fund budget, and then we voted separately in a different article on the highway budget. We voted separately on the library budget. And then over time, we kind of put those all together and there's one big kind of complex motion that gets made that people that sitting at the table understand, and maybe the people out in the audience don't understand as much. But the problem with trying to go to Australian ballot, and this is why I think charters may be a way. We could talk about the representative town meeting, we could talk about doing what Jericho did and codifying it. But if you just go to Australian ballot now, I'm pretty certain the state law just says you can ask a question about the budget. And it's one number. You can't break anything down. You can't, delineate one section of it from something else. And I think that's what we lose in just moving to Australian ballot. So I'm a big proponent, as you know, of town meeting. I think that we can make it work. We should form this committee, but we should also think about how we can address it through a charter and make it work specifically for Waterbury, because that's what a charter is for. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. I'm gonna call it for tonight and acknowledge that there's lots more discussion on this topic, so again, thank you to everyone for sharing info and input. If you're catching my slight glaze, I'm imminently aware of the hour plus on our agenda and the hour plus of executive session, so just naming that. One of the things we do as select board members, figure out how to have these types of conversation and do all of the other business of the town. You have a closing thought, one of you two?
Yeah, I just wondered if we could have a show of hands, anyone that would be interested in participating in this committee, if we were to call one.
Like from the audience.
Okay, I think Roger was
Yeah.
asking, show of hands, I'm seeing 6-ish, 7 in the room. Of potential folks, and it looks like Roger's scribbling, if people wouldn't
On the
mind.
line, Amy here too.
Thank you, Amy.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
If you just a reminder to be clear about your charge.
Great, thank you. And a great note from Susan around being clear about any charges, but we won't do anything about that until we have further conversation. So for tonight, I'm gonna move us on to Stanley Wasson Development. All right. This we noted at our last meeting is gonna be a standing agenda item at our upcoming select board meetings. So I'll start off, Tom, if there's any updates. We just wanted to keep it on the agenda for updates and opportunity for input. For all those keeping track at home, I have started a running second page of future agenda items, including but not limited to scheduled meetings, special meetings, and our ever to be scheduled parking lot. Noting specifically the October 6th meeting that we all decided at our last meeting would have a heavy focus on this, but enough from me. Tom, do you have
So a couple brief updates. The first is the phase 1 environmental assessment has been completed as on the website. Feel free to download it, but be careful, it's about 1,000 pages with all the attachments, because in fact, the phase 1 is a full paper review. But in essence, the conclusion on the phase 1 by the engineer is that a phased further investigation is not necessary, which is the key that phrase that we're hoping to get as part of the phase 1. Some history with the buildings, obviously, particularly there was a laundry facility on site, and there was essentially there was drained onto the site, but no evidence of any chemicals that were industrial solvents, that sort of thing, just regular laundry. And then did get some questions for clarifications from a developer, which they answered, and those will be on the website hopefully tomorrow morning. Nothing substantial in terms of those questions. It's a question about the building orientation, and had the state given me any input about their desired orientation of future buildings, and the answer was I haven't heard from the state about that at all, and it certainly is not in the option agreement that we have with them, which would have been there, but I'm going to say, here's what we want here. Definitely could participate in things at the ERB meeting. Also asked about any geotechnical analysis that may be available, that sort of thing, which we simply don't have. But I've asked the state for that also. asked about the town's willingness to participate in any sort of TIF or CHIP financing programs, and the answer I gave was, I think that's certainly on the table as part of a development agreement, but there's nothing formalized, and in fact, the CHIP program is new and the rules aren't even completed yet by the state, so there's some time there. So nothing, earth shattering from in terms of the questions from the developer. That will be on the website tomorrow, but I think the phase one was the best news we could have hoped for.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from board members on this? Questions or comments from anyone in the public? Harry?
Tom, is there more than one developer that's entertaining our project?
Just one developer that requested comments. Sorry, requested clarification.
Other questions or comments for folks? Mal?
What's the deadline for submitting proposals?
Mal asking the deadline of the request for qualifications, I want to say the 26th of this month, but please check me, board members and Tom.
I believe that's correct, that's Friday.
So Friday, the 26th at 4:30, and then that was part of the impetus for scheduling something October 6th, once we would have that information for folks to share. We do have a meeting before then too, I should say, though, it's a 5 Monday month, so there was a meeting the 29th, the following Monday, after the things were due on Friday. It will be on that agenda as well, I think. I won't be present, Kim will be here. But really a big engagement on the 6th. Other questions, comments, updates from folks? All right,
Yeah, I'm just gonna ask a development related question. Tom has answered this question to me, but lots of questions about what Kingsbury is up to at the old shed.
They are making that their headquarters. Simply stated.
Yeah.
Reusing much of the old building, probably in doing that, spending more money than they would versus tearing it down, but good for them for caring about the history of it.
Right, sounds good.
awesome. Other questions and comments? Right, I will not belabor us further, but note that this will again be on future agendas. Our next item was preliminary discussion of request to change speed limit near 1930 Waterbury Stowe Road, originally the said on Route 100, and I was worried that there would be quite a lot of stress about that as an agenda item. We have an email here from our Public Works Director, and also from John Grenier of Grenier Engineering. I will name that, Tom, you were upfront that you were not going to take a position for or against this, so we have the email from Woody, but do you mind speaking to it, or I can?
Happy to speak about it. I think the short version is, this is a little bit of a. No, there is proposed development in this area, and this would effectively make Route 100 40 miles an hour or less until the end of this segment, which is recommended by the Public Works Director.
And to pause for a moment and orient folks, this area of Route 100 is going through the light at Guptill. It's where the Forge Gym is, the new Copley Medical Facility, that general area before you get to the Cabot Annex if you're heading towards Stowe.
So essentially from the Cabot Annex to the village would be 40 miles or less. If this were, if this were ultimately approved, the select board does not set the speed limits. The state highway will use simply have staff make that request of state to enact the change.
And this is because, yes, we have, I had it,
I don't know, but quick question.
thank you. And this is because there's potential development up there, plus the existing businesses, or development is underway.
Potential, but short of having development.
I don't have any major feelings about this issue.
I really like emotion was.
You would just need a motion, and either myself or the would send an email to the agency of transportation saying here's a select board's intent. I guess I can say to Alyssa, after Alyssa's comment, I'm not taking a position, but I will say. My observation is you hear a lot from people about Route 100. For a lot of reasons, the most recent one being Bush Hill Road and the bridge. I think the state's priority generally is moving people north to south on Rockland. And I think you ought to think about those numbers and whether or not lower speed limits is also going to result in some compounding factors if you slow that traffic. I don't know the right answer.
Okay, thank you. I'm in favor of lowering it. I think this request is coming from businesses that are in that area, as I understand it, and probably know it best, have experienced it. And obviously have a reason for asking for it. It's 10 miles lower. I hate to say it, people speed 10 miles above anyways, like, I don't know if it'll make that much of a difference. I hope for the people asking sake that it does. But I understand their arguments and I'm in favor of lowering.
Other questions or comments? Kate?
I guess if, this request comes first from Grenier Engineering, but then secondly, it says attached as a map, but I concur with Woody's write up about this area. I traverse that strip of 100 quite a bit. And Tori's absolutely right. People do rip down that strip. So if you bring that speed limit down a little bit, maybe we'll rip a little less hard.
Mike?
Like the idea that there's some consistency in the speed limit in that whole zone. I think people are gonna speed anyway. I'm not naive. People go too fast regardless. But I think that you have a whole zone, they're probably gonna, as most speeding zones, they give you a little bit of, extra, unless they're really looking to give tickets. So I think it's getting people not going 60 miles an hour, you might get them going 50 and then still not probably get tickets. So I'm all in favor, we have a whole zone that it will be uniform and there won't be as much of a question as to where it starts and where it stops.
Roger?
I'm in favor of this as well. I did my green up duty along that section of road and discovered that there's a wildlife corridor there because I found a dead coyote that had been hit on one side of the road and a dead deer on the other side of the road. So, wildlife protection alone, I think it's good.
Okay, so I move to have write the email to the town. Oh, sorry.
I'm gonna let Tori continue, make her motion, and then I'll call it Amy. Go ahead.
I move to allow Tom to write the email, appropriate emails and take the action to lower the speed limit from 50 to 40.
And to request it. So to be clear, we're at best pleading with the state to do it.
Yes, whatever actions would make it most possible.
Second.
So motion by Tori, second by Kane. Further discussion, Amy, you have your hand up.
Yes, I travel that road quite frequently. I do agree with all the sentiments about around safety and speed. I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're actually trying to approve here. I think that Tom's comment around the implications or planning of AOTs, particularly as we heard earlier in the evening, some interest in assessing the speed of changes in lights. And that would go all the way down to Blush Hill. So you'd have Blush Hill, Gupta Hill, and then the flow of traffic. And I'm just curious if that analysis is influencing your decision. And I would suggest that because I think it will have big implications regardless of human choice, speeding or not speeding, but it may actually affect where backing up becomes a bigger challenge, particularly on those S curves just beyond Mount Mansfield Orthopedics now, where I personally have come up on traffic that's quite dangerous at a standstill.
Anyone have a response?
I will respond with including factors such as that. in any correspondence between V-Trans and the applicable authorities and the town of Waterbury?
And just speaking for myself, Amy, this is just my own impression. The email, which is on the website, I think the concern is the safety and the traveling, and I guess I will just say the lights in general, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, is V-Trans purview. I think to the extent we've been worried about doing pedestrian crossings because V-Trans is so on top of the signals and backup, so speaking for myself, I trust that V-Trans in choosing to accept or not accept our recommendation will likely conduct that analysis, but I don't know for that for sure, but for myself, that's my operating assumption.
Okay,
Carrie-
I think I'd like to have that clearly stated as an assumption so that I've worked with the state well enough to know that don't assume anything, prove everything.
Thanks, Harry, go ahead.
I'd love to offer the context on this one, so, as much as we might hope and wish, the setting of speed limits on the state highway is not something that's really subjected to a lot of local goals and inputs. It's got to be subjected to a warrant analysis that V-Trans does, and it ultimately needs to be approved by the State Traffic Commission. Having experienced it a couple times, it's not a simple lift.
And one such request was John saying it was requested when the physical therapy went in, and clearly no changes have been made. So that's why the Public Works Director is asking again, and we have a motion on the table from the board to have staff write that email. Do we have other questions or comments? All right, questions or comments on the motion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Tom, your neutral comments aside, you understand the outcomes from the board? All right, this brings us to our next two added agenda items for all those keeping track. The next one was also highway related, but this was specifically the annual certificate of highway town mileage. Tom, do you want to speak to this at all?
This is just an annual form we've got to fill out for the state that it's just tied to some formulaic funding, but we've got to show how much we spend each year based on that.
Questions or comments from any board members on the form, which we have copies of and is posted? Like, if not, I think we would need a motion for the second page to, what is the verb I want here?
Sign,
Yeah,
I move. Sign the annual financial plan, town highways. Concurrent with 19 DSA, section 306J.
I'm gonna give it to Mike. So we had a motion by Kane, second by Mike. Any further discussion or questions? Chris?
Says on the top, I'm assuming this is for next year.
That's all we use next year. We use these years as budget numbers. And we're way over the $300 a mile.
And one more, Bridge 14 and what bridge?
Give me a second.
Right? It says bride, not bridge. That's why we're laughing. Cause you both caught our typo and asked a good question, so thank you.
Bridge 14, I just signed the number today. The bridge over Gulf, it's on Municipal, Municipal. So we had scouring. We essentially had a hole in the bridge abutment, not deemed unsafe, but we filled it in with concrete. And then added some, we lost all the protective shot rock around the bridge, so we pointed that, did some brush clearing and screen that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's that work at T-chart, right?
Yeah, other questions or comments? So just Tom noting we're well above the $300 per, is it mile? You just said, Tom?
Yeah.
That's required. This is for a fiscal year beginning July 1, which is why we're considering it now. Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, I will do a signed copy that we can circulate. The next item was the
That's
question.
memorial.
Yeah. question pertaining to the military monuments at Rusty Parker Park. Al, thank you for sticking with us. Tom, would you mind starting?
Sure, this came up recently at a cemetery commissioners meeting. So for background, when the VFW folded some years back, there was a fund given to the town, which we continued our town managed to this day, the Veterans Monument Fund. It's got a pretty sizable amount in it. We've used that over the years for cleaning the monuments, some smaller expenditures, but it hasn't been used much, at least for some time. The cemetery commissioners were contacted by the American Legion, and they're wondering about who has the authority to add names to the monument in Rusty Parker. And the cemetery commissioners made it clear they did not want that authority. And I don't think the select board wants to be in the business of voting on what name gets added to our veterans monument. So I think simply making it clear to the American Legion that we trust them to do that is perfectly fine. And I can correspond with them about maintaining the investments, how that is done. But it's really the outstanding issue is who has the authority to put them in the monuments, and I think the Legion's the appropriate entity.
Questions or comments from the board? Kane?
I'd like to comment. I don't think if we provide funds for the upkeep of that monument, I think we need to continue. I think maybe leaving the decision of carving names into it should be up to the American Legion or the Veterans of Foreign Wars. But I don't think that could support abandoning financially the war
Yeah,
memorial.
and I don't think there's a request for that. I
Okay.
think they just want some clarity, and then I can speak with them and we can share information about how much funds are available. They just want to know. And then what happened, I believe, was person I was in communication with about this in previous years has passed away. So I think they just want some clarity going forward.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments from the board? Are you looking for a motion on Tom clarifying that? We reiterate that or define who we think has a permission?
I think that would be great.
I make a motion to have the American Legion be the designee to add any names to the war monuments in Rusty Parker Park.
I'll say.
With the understanding that we would be still managing the funds to make those additions happen.
I take that as a friendly amendment. Thank you.
Great. We had a motion by Mike and a second by Roger. Al, you had your hand up.
Can I speak?
Please.
I can't talk about what happened before 43 years ago, but since I've been involved in the park, the Legion, when we first developed Rusty Parker Park, wasn't doing anything with the monument area down there, and it started to get overgrown to the point that there were scrubs, bushes, things that really needed to be pruned, needed to be replaced, etc. And we looked at it since we developed the park, that this is an eyesore and it's right on South Main Street. And I approached the Legion on this, and the Legion said, well, we don't have the people to do it. Do you? And I said, well, we don't have the resources to do it, but we have the people. And so for many years, Rotary. For many years, our Rotary Club included the monument area and got it spruced up to the point where it was presentable. And the Legion used to get a bill from us for materials that we provided, and we provided the labor for that. Then, as our park developed even further, we had other gardens to deal with, and we solicited the master gardeners to help us out. Julie Fraley, one person who was a master gardener, did this for 10 years, and she worked in the monument area as well as Rusty Parker Park. So she had her crew do everything at once. And again, she gave us a bill for the materials and we sent it to the Legion. and Rotary paid for Rotary stuff. This isn't, the village didn't pay for anything. We were taking care of that. Then when two more monuments were put in there on either side of the existing monuments, the Legion was asked, well, you know, what's gonna happen? The payment for that, et cetera. And apparently they found some funds. I don't believe it was the village that paid for it. To put in the foundation, which was a huge concrete, two huge concrete foundations. And then erect the monuments, which are flanking right now the monument area. And Charlie Grender donated his services. He was a member of the Rotary Club to do the design for the foundation and whatnot. And I supervised the installation and the cleanup that had to be done afterwards. And then the landscaping that had to be done afterwards. We put a little path in front of the monument, so people didn't have to walk through bushes to get to see the people that were there. Now, since then, we have decided that we would not be providing, if this is after Julie Fraley, Master Gardeners have stopped working on it. We said, we have other gardens and whatnot we're taking care of, and also we have members of our club that knew a lot about gardening and whatnot, and we, you know, encouraged them to try to get involved. And I think that happened for 2 years after Julia left, and then that died. We basically didn't do anything with the gardens, but Phil Baker stepped forward and he worked on the gardens for a while. I'm not sure who was after Phil, but Sam Miller got involved with trying to take care of the gardens. And he and I had sort of a rough meeting one time because he wanted the gardens to be ready by Memorial Day, I think it was. And we were having trouble that year with the rain and everything, trying to get everything going. And he got so mad about it. I mean, we were like this. And I said, okay, you take care of it. You're gonna handle it. And he said, well, we got the funds. And I understand that there are funds that are basically dedicated for that purpose to take care of the monument area from the Legion. He says, we got the funds, I'm gonna handle it. So Sam Miller handled that for a short period of time. And then, I'm having a brain freeze here. Julie Roy took care of it for a couple of years. But recently, I think Bill Woodruff was asked to take care of it because he didn't know who was taking care of it for the Legion, and Bill had Luciano take care of with his crew that area, and that happened to be a bonus for us because he wasn't directed to that one area. He took care of the whole park, so he did the mulching and cleanup, but he got it done in time. And so I'm thinking that it would be beneficial somehow for there to be a memorandum of understanding between the village and the Legion going forward, which would indicate, the town and the Legion, indicate what the Legion is going to do. So he does something to fall back on them and say, hey, you agreed to do this. And look at the funds, and if the funds aren't enough, this is beautification of our, and in memory of members of our town, that perhaps a small budget item could be put in there for maintenance, if the Legion didn't have to take care of it. We did have some issues that came up with somebody with a screwdriver popping letters out of the names that were there for a short period of time. And I don't know how they got that, and if they got that fixed, but I mean, that was a vandalism issue. We try to keep the kids from climbing over that area during the park concerts, for example. So we're vigilant about having them taken care of. But that's some of the history of it. And I think going forward, if the Legion takes the responsibility for identifying what's needed and making the arrangements for somebody to take care of it, that there'd be a budget item from the town that could help. If that money that was dedicated is a fund, Ron, do you know where the fund is? Yeah, the fund was supposed to be for that. I'm sure that would get depleted over time, but at least to provide an initiative to say, hey, the town recognizes that this is something of interest and we need to preserve it and go forward. Our rotary code does not take care of it. When the
Thank you.
mulch pile is delivered in the spring, we mulch our areas, and this year, we noticed there's a pile left over there, and I realized, well, it's because nobody took care of the leaves, so they
Awesome.
didn't put any mulch out on that area, so.
Thanks,
Anyway.
Al. Tori had a hand up.
As I understand it, and thank you all for the background on it all, but as I understand it, the request is to just allow the Legion to tell us the names to put on there. It's
Right.
not about maintenance, it's not about funds, it's not about any of that, it's just they are going to very helpfully provide us with the names of the veterans that should be on that.
Okay. I do think it's highlighting that we maybe need a clarity around the maintenance, because I will say this email has 2 paragraphs, if one is around the names, and I think we're clearly saying we think that's their purview. And it sounds like the town has funds and historically, but with tribulations over time, hasn't done that, so it might be worth clarifying that maintenance piece further, but you noted in your amendment that we're not changing any funding or that the town provides or anything.
Right, I mean, if we can, maybe we need to look into
Yeah.
who's in charge of maintaining it, but we would still control funds.
Roger?
I'll just note that, Revitalizing Waterbury does have a design committee, that is headed up by Julie Fraley. And I can discuss with her whether, that her committee wants to take that on. And one of the things that they do is to, clean up and mulch, flower beds, all along Main Street, up through to, the roundabout. So, they could considerably take that, piece on as well. Under design committee.
All right, any other questions or comments on this? Are we clear the motion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstaining? Great, motion passes, so, and Tom, I assume you'll be able to follow up with them. And that brings us to Select Board and Municipal Manager informational updates. Does anyone have any exciting updates to share? Select Board members?
I'll go first.
Okay,
I've got nothing.
okay, thank,
Alright, as I understand it, 2 members of our town staff, Mike Valder and Carl James, helped the police locate missing Waterbury residents, so. Applause for those very helpful staff, and thank you for doing that.
that's true. Other Select Board updates? Nothing from you, Mike? And Roger?
I do have one, that Revitalizing Waterbury will be hosting, all 24, organizations. This was something that was mentioned by, our president earlier, but, we'll be hosting the, downtown program retreat here in Waterbury, actually, in this very room, starting tomorrow through Thursday morning.
The only update I have is that last Monday I went to the next of the planning commission's input sessions for the town plan. It was on housing, so the housing task force had drafted goals and we reviewed those. Skip from EFUD was there and the number of the housing task force, and I think some good conversations. And again, just naming that the planning commission has been having these collaborative sessions. We had some community members as well, someone from the Down Street Board of Directors, who's also a resident. So I'm just really appreciating them, having them as a forum. We gave input on, again, goals, aspirations. It's all stuff that's gonna ultimately get hearings with the planning commission and come to us as the select board. So I know they're posting all those materials, so just so folks are aware, even if they're not at the meetings. That's all I had. Tom, any informational updates to share?
Yep, couple of things. First is that we now own 40 Administrate. Because the FEMA buyout process has been fully completed. Took, I don't know how long, and there were 8 others approved, so we'll see what happens there. Second thing is, we are finally done with the 2024 FEMA claim. So now the only final step I've got to do is submit a claim for my and a few others administrative time. Still, we're not done with 2023, but one challenge at a time. And then also just want to give a reminder on October 4th. The time escapes me for some reason, but it's a late night, on October 4th, which is a Saturday, there is a walkthrough. The gathering will be at the Triangle in Waterbury Center, and it's related to the Better Connections grant, and I'll put a flyer about that on our website, tomorrow, and probably do a front porch forum announcement. That'll be with the committee, with the consultants, with whatever members of the public want to attend. With the 5th as a rain date, although we intend to go, we can fix president.
Thanks, Tom. Roger?
Tom, what now happens with the demolition of 40 Union Street?
State is putting it out to bid. I think they can demo in 12 months of the year, so it's just a matter of how fast they complete that process. When I last spoke with them, it was gonna take a little while because they were doing demolition bids for not one property at a time, but for the whole package. So we had a couple calls here last week from some very, very large Vermont companies that were that were asking questions about the demo of that building. So that's all part of the bid process. So I'm hopeful it'll happen within 6 months.
You can see the other applicants on that same block, and I said, go at the same time, or
They haven't been,
they already looked at.
36 has been fully approved. That's the other vacancy. It's been fully approved. However, it was fully approved a month or so ago, and I don't have a closing date yet. So don't know why that one is taking longer with the mercy of the closing attorney. For the seller, state is essentially the seller is really the state. They're handling closing on behalf of the seller. And then the other 2 properties in FEMA that were approved, we haven't been approved locally. We haven't heard whether or not they've been approved by FEMA at all, much less moving through the process.
Right.
Part of the demolition, I assume they're gonna remove hazardous material.
They remove everything, yeah.
Any other updates? All right, I will move us to the ever-present agenda item that I do put at every meeting just for public awareness to review agenda items for next meeting. If you go to the next page, again, doing my best as a public facilitator to note when we have items that we've tried to slot in. Tom and I meet each week to review and bump things based on staff capacity, new things that we don't know about at the meeting, but that is the process. Not on this sheet, but I am aware from an email from Amy that the Waterbury Conservation Commission would like to do a quarterly update on the 29th. The meeting on September 22nd is the public hearing on the CDBG application. It will be here and also on Zoom.
What does that acronym stand for? I apologize.
Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery. It's a type of grant funding, and the town's application right now includes 2 projects. One is for Randall Meadow for implementation of mitigation, and one is for planning only, and that's for housing at the town old parcel by Woody Ave.
Okay.
And call for providing feedback at that.
Thank you. If I recommend spelling that out, so as I think about a public member understanding what that meeting's really about, the description you just provided was really helpful, but that's not clear on the agenda here. So in terms of even trying to get more engagement, that might be a helpful descriptor.
Thanks.
Question.
Yep.
Why is paving in the parking lot when we are paving every year?
We did look at paving a while ago. We were just need to move out.
Yeah, we were gonna say, we just completed some paving projects. So one could say that the parking lot is complete.
Okay, so I'll just check for the 22nd, which is again, this noon formal one. Tom Bryan is checking back to us. But otherwise, as it's a special meeting, my operating assumption is we're not trying to pack the agenda, so leaving that be. So then we're moving to September 29th. These capital plans have been bumped several meetings, so they were there.
Yeah.
We just mentioned that, and then we just said paving.
Well, my question is why is it even in the parking lot when we're constantly undergoing paving projects.
Yeah, we did a couple of works, we just didn't finish sidewalks.
Got it.
Yeah.
For the 29th, we delayed this a little bit, but we'd like to, I think we should have an agenda item for Brian Voigt with Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission, who wants to talk about a stormwater master planning process.
Great.
And associated grant.
Packet with guests.
I love seeing the new event permit on there, but I didn't realize it was finalized and instead it's.
Continued discussion and review of revised event permit. You wanna schedule that arrow up to the 29th?
Unless it gets packed, then we'll do October 6th.
Up to you all, but we can arrow it up.
Let's arrow it to October 6th, because the 29th is sounding busy.
I will say while moderating tonight's meeting, I can't wait until we have an updated events permit.
Then I think it's more of a parking lot though. So our traffic ordinance is an old PDF document that's been edited 30 times. Cannot be converted to Word. At some point, someone just gotta type it out.
I would,
Start fresh. Don't volunteer for that, trust me.
oh no,
But
kind of fair about.
there's also, I think, in that process, a lot of updates need to happen. A simple example is that I cannot.
I was muted. Sorry, Tom's computer died. I'm hooking up the owl. Hold on. Oh, hooking up an owl. Hold, please.
Do we wanna debate or design that part of that ordinance on the 29th?
So
We got.
let's wait until we're all hooked up.
Especially for the recording for the owl. Is this still good online? Oh, my sound is off, so it's not.
Yeah, we can hear you. I can hear you, okay.
Thank you. Sorry, Tom's laptop died, so we just switched the owl to my laptop.
So as I understand it, Tom was making a bid to look at our ordinances and what needs to be updated. So. Tom, which one would be the most important?
Parking.
Okay. How about? Hold on, let me double check the calendar. So I'm not gonna-
Every easy one that could be fit almost anywhere. I think we should have on any, as we heard today, meetings on important public holidays that we probably should discuss. I'll have a policy on all of them.
Would you like to draft a policy for us to look at on October
Or it
5th?
would just be not meeting on public holidays, meet the day after.
Wait, do you
Right,
want,
but which?
are we
public-
discussing that on the 29th or are we discussing it right now?
Well, that's, she asked the question.
I asked you to
Six, I would say, have a warned, thing, because in response to what we heard today.
On September 29th?
29th, 6th, whichever one is more.
They got
I don't
packs.
think it'll be a long.
Okay, you'll do the 20th. I am writing a memo as the one who I will say screen shared an entire list of all these meeting dates in. After the meeting, after town meeting, I typed in myself, it's on the town website that included all of the holidays we were gonna meet on, then had it as an agenda item the meeting before. I'll name, I'm defensive as chair, and I think we've clearly gotten public input against this. I tried at every opportunity to ask for public input, so I just think it's a shame that we only find it apple cut. So I'm breaking my own rules around, we're not supposed to discuss the thing, but yes, discuss it on September 29th.
On October 6th, I would like to. Look at the traffic ordinance. And. The non-existent light ordinance.
Light ordinance?
We have no light ordinance. And there's other. Here, and the state does, and our residents technically have to follow the state one, but since. We don't have one, it's like a little gray area. It's the same thing with the noise ordinance. So,
But don't we just default to the state? should we not have an ordinance?
Right, but our people can't enforce it without it being town law.
Use zoning bylaws, so.
Right, so we'll do, Tom, if you're good with that, we're gonna do traffic and light on October sixth, and then maybe November third, we can look at noise. And throw in another one.
Why is there no second meeting in October?
I only had that one there because we had a specific thing for it. It's not a comprehensive list of every meeting. Anne, go ahead.
Oh, it's a Friday.
The planning commission, and the planning zoning, light and the excessive light, there's a whole bunch, for every, time somebody wants to put up a sign or starts a new business, lighting is always considered by the planning commission.
I will say,
Need another ordinance,
so, and if I may, the regulations for zoning are all for new construction that need permits, but there are lights that can be erected without permits or are older that are not subject to those regulations, whereas an ordinance would include all lighting, no matter when it was erected.
that means people have to go back who have had lights going for 6 weeks are going to have to go back and get a separate permit from the town as opposed to from the design review committee, or
I think for now, we're just asking for it to be on an agenda. We may choose to have no ordinance because we have no enforcement and we'll get the updated details about what regs do and don't apply. Did we say October 6th or November 3rd for that conversation? Okay, so I'm postponing, thank you, Anne. I'm postponing the rest of that to October 6th. Amy, you have a hand up?
Yeah, I'm glad Anne raised those because those are some of my same questions, wondering what we were trying to accomplish here. And then I can't help but go back to the prioritization of things in the parking lot. And I look at when we have state guidance that exists today and does provide us with instruction on how to handle these things, would we choose taking on an item that is maybe a nice to have or a refinement of an existing law versus something like the lot, meaning that's a very new policy and practice for our town, and we have a lot more to discuss there. So I'm one, supporting Anne's commentary, and then two, adding to that.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. For September 29th, they have the capital plans, the Conservation Commission quarterly update. Are we discussing paving at that meeting or just saying we're taking it off the parking lot?
My suggestion was to take it out of the parking lot.
Okay, and Brian Voigt stormwater plan. And I'll just name, we'll revisit this again, so I'm hearing the prioritization. Again, I'm being transparent in the extent to which I seek select board and public input at this agenda item, and then it does get changed and adjusted. For the 29th, send changes and adjustments to Kane, because he'll be the one finalizing the agenda as vice chair.
I noted 6 names that were interested in this committee to look at strengthening democracy in and around town meeting. Could we put that on the agenda for the 29th?
What would you like the item to be?
Forming the committee or discussing their charge.
Yeah, to the charge of the committee.
I think we got some pretty pointed feedback around invitation as well, so
Round question.
probably worth emailing those 6 individuals to see if
I can.
they can attend.
Are we gonna have too much stuff on the 29th?
Everything's 10 minutes.
I tried tonight, and here we are. Yeah.
No data.
Go ahead, Al.
I'd like to pass this down to Tori.
Yep.
She didn't get a copy. I'd like to suggest that topic on the intersection, that if Tom can get a letter to the state, to have the state come to the board meeting on the 6th, that would not be any too early, given the fact that they're gonna be wrapping up the project, which is the Bridge 36 project that they're working on. And timing, I think, is very important while it's still hot to drive home the issue that they can make a change. The change is not going to be expensive. I'm passionate about this only because I've spent an awful lot of time not charging anything for it in order to look at all of the options here at that intersection. And I'm surprised that, for example, the Blush Hill line, when that stripe was coming down Blush Hill, that wasn't changed. That was a simple thing, moving that double line over to allow two cars to, anyway, you know what I'm talking about. But I've detailed and summarized, et cetera, but please read it. And I would suggest that if the topic be on the agenda for the 6th, that would give you time to see if we can get a state representative from AOT to answer questions why can't we, and also answer questions as far as the fund that is concerned.
Thanks, Zach. Okay, any other agenda notes, noting that there will be refinement and additional review of these?
And then. You want to sit down on Friday before?
Yep.
Sometime in the morning.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay, any other agenda items? All right, that moves us to our next things, executive sessions. We have 2 executive sessions. One on labor negotiations with the municipal manager, one on personnel without the municipal manager. I'll leave my laptop running in here and we can leave and come back. Does someone want to make motions?
I move to find the premature public knowledge of labor negotiations would place the town of Waterbury at a significant disadvantage.
Second.
Motion by Kane, second by Tori. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
I move to enter executive session and invite the municipal manager.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we will head to executive session. I'm just gonna leave it running here. I have signed copies of everything.
This is different. Because
Oh, sorry.
Actually, back in August, about the 250th.
Oh, got
Michelle
it.
doesn't have signed copies, past that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just gonna leave the Zoom running and I think we should go in for brevity because it is late and so we can get out of here.
Do you know where this ordinance PDF file is that Tom's talking about that we need to work?
It's on the town website and we have tried converting it.
It's like typewritten and handwritten.
Oh.
I know, because I know there's normally a converter. We've tried the Adobe Pro converter. No, I appreciate.
Got a couple different converter websites that I use. People send me all kinds of wonderful things sometimes. That need help in order to actually get the information out of it without retyping, so. I feel your pain.
I mean, if you want to take a look.
I was trying to find it on the website though.
It might be under ordinances and policies. It's like Waterbury traffic
Yeah,
enforcement.
yeah, this is ordinance and I didn't see it on the
This
list.
is
That
great.
required.
It's going hard here.
All right, select board executive session for unions, no action taken. So we would need a second round of motions for a second executive session.
I move to find premature public knowledge of personnel matters would place the town of Waterbury at a significant disadvantage.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention?
I move to enter executive session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Board is noting that we don't anticipate, it's just the select board and we don't anticipate any action after this meeting. Okay.